What's good, everybody? It's King here. Hope you guys are having a great day. Welcome to a tier list that I've been wanting to do again for a very long time. As you guys see by the title and obviously on the screen, this is going to be the Gow Universe ranked from weakest to strongest, something to those lines. Like with my last God of War Power Scaling tier list video, right? Where in that video I was very misinformed. I was very ignorant of some things, didn't have the best logic or understanding in mind, and I kind of saw things from mixed, sometimes reasonable, as even though this tier list is going to be hopefully shorter, it is a lot more to the point, it's a lot more concrete, cohesive, and set in stone and precise. This is still going to be having possibly a great deal of people not understanding or unraveling why I say or do what I do. If you are new here, first of all, I appreciate you for watching. I hope you guys have a great day, and I appreciate you for viewing. If you like this content, please consider leaving a like, share, subscribe, and comment. It will very much help me out, but regardless, I appreciate your viewage anyway. With that being said, though, enough of the chat, enough of the BS. Let's go and get into it. There's a few things I want to go ahead and set clear first when we get into the greater record of stuff. If you disagree with any of the stuff involving this tier list, as of course, people are going to have disagreements, and you wish to go and possibly debunk me, possibly that guy named Kratos, who I wouldn't be surprised will come and view this video, right? My Discord is RPKing3124, and is always open for the case of, debate, or any case of, possible invite to come and debate, right? I'm open to be educated more, or to be greater, looked into on a sense of, lore that I don't know of, or greater reasons of this. But regardless, at the end of the day, this is my opinion. I have a lot of objective, greater case of merit that I feel like some other people. And on my last tier list, where a lot of my stuff was kind of mixture of a bunch of different unravel of the things in the moment and trying to give the best reason of it, I have looked over this tier list for a good minute, and I feel very confident in all around my rankings, my decisions, and my points, and I'll be very ready to go and greater explain it. But again, if you disagree, my Discord is RPKing3124, and I'm very open to the case of debate in any case of the way. Regardless of that, let's go and get into it. So starting with the first tier is question marks that has no scaling. This is something that I've already explained before, but I will greater grand scope explain in the sense for, people who don't understand this tier that I made, slash, also possibly some tier lists from other people, and there are people that do tier lists or anything of this sort about power scaling or not. I'm not saying that none of these people have any merit of scaling or can't be scaled. It's more the fact that I don't know of them, or they don't really hold any actual weight in the actual scale chain, or it can't just legitimately not be scaled because we have nothing to take from them. So if you want to make your own tier list, or you have your own opinion on where to scale these people, go ahead. I don't think because people show a little bit of doing something like Aaron Gerboda or whoever, right, should really have any assertion or any true constitution for being scaled outright deliberately, because they barely to even at all scale to anything. So to me, I don't really see the reason. I don't really see that standing out any too dummy different. And I don't really see the validity. I either also don't know, like I said, and that goes for credit of, other tier lists of mine where I say, question mark or don't care or don't remember in greater form as, question mark would have to, right? Because I don't really see the merit in scaling. I don't know of them. These are deliberately just people, name dropped or insinuated to exist by comparison to the original myths, Greek, Roman, or Norse. So, yeah, like, again, you can actually go about scaling these if you want, but for me, for this tier list, and the core point of it, it is to not click but entirely scale everything of the God of War universe, but I can only scale what is the most, I feel like, concrete, reasonably to be cited and held to, impossible to be scaled. I don't even know half a great deal of these people where, again, there's no scale to be taken, but let's move on to the next tier. So, the next tier is a mixed kind of joking tier, but does have some truth to it in the record that these people have very mixed, shaky scaling that I can't precisely say where they are, right? But I also see some argumentation for where you could possibly try to put these people at in the record for them being, powerful enough or stated to be this, or having mixed, reasonable proclaim and showing of being something of some interesting type. right? But all of them in some way or another are people who never actually demonstrated this in full showing. The statements have a lot more context and a lot more shit to it that I feel like don't give the most proper, really actual credence to a person being this and this and that. And I'm kind of all around mixed on to really require and consider a person to be this and this and that and the third, to be of this different level of scaling chain in comparison, when again I think it is very much a wacky mixed credit of consistency to be had on these people, or these people just flat out don't have anything consistent to go off of or clear that makes me feel comfortable in properly scaling them. Like I said, with question marks, there's no scaling. If you feel like you have the nerve to go and scale them, that's fine. If you want to scale them somewhere, I don't think you possibly would be wrong, depending on what we're talking about. But I just personally don't. And again, it's a little bit of a joke tier if it's an obvious because of the three people down here. But to actually explain a little bit, let's start off with the ship captain. You know, we all know that ship captain is omnipotent, you know, always coming back to suffer. But, you know, besides that jokes, Aphrodite, not even a goddess or anything about your record of like standing to anybody as a goddess of, you know, Olympus. She would be of a higher record form. But, you know, because the fact that she's ultimate wifey, ain't nobody can even stand to her, ain't nobody can even compare to the Afro Gyat. You know what I'm saying? Last Spartan, undisputed GOAT, enough said. Atlas, when we actually get to some truth, because now I'm actually going to say like some legit shit, right? Like Atlas, not only from his confines, being him chained up, credit if I can't show his great case of, you know, capabilities like in his prime, and his prime should, I feel like, be the more concerning, you know, talk for him and not a version of him that is so washed and so formal to actually bang out with anybody, right, without so much of mixed context. I don't really see the reason to scale him anywhere. He could be reasonably weaker than his, you know, younger self, or it's just the fact of his confines having him stamped to a situation of unfortunate, you know, imprisonment and unfortunate precautionary formal confines that put him out of commission easily to actually be able to be fighting or actually be defeated. So in a way, because again of him being bound to hold up the heavens, he cannot go about great care, you know, banging out with people because of the fact that it would cause not just devastation to everything, it's also makes back out of character, and the guys don't see the reason. I talked about Hermes before in the last tier list, where my man is ridiculously fast and would outdo everybody across the board, but because of the fact of his speed being very iffy and weird to actually properly scale to put in to, you know, possible comprehension, I don't really see the most defined way to actually go about scaling him without possibly, if whoever he faces, right, eventually just one-tapping him, because he has no concrete, you know, AP to really take from besides mixed bag gameplay. And this man blitzing around, this man Kratos like Sonic. He has great speed feats and accolades, and is like, you know, the Flash of the God of War universe. You know, he has the Greek Air Force Ones. He popping off. He do whatever he do, but that's really it. Messenger, speedster, dude. Nothing of greater presence. Don't get it twisted. I'm not saying Hermes can't, you know, take out some fodder. Like, there's an argument Hermes probably will like kill possibly everybody on this tier and people above. But I'm just saying it's like I'm kind of mixed to really concretely say anything with him. So again, joking aside or not, you know, the speedster of the Greek gods really would just be here to me, to my best credit of, you know, trying to be realistic. Thoth, you know, is hell in a matter for his knowledge and being in the higher plane of existence. Can't give him conclusiveness to be reasonably credit of being a person beyond the compare of everybody else, but it's a mixed bag of that actually constitutes anything. And unlike Athena, where she actually shows a little bit what she can do and has some recall to being a ridiculously, you know, kind of crazed character in her moves as a person, right? From like mental distortion, has capability to move from people's bodies like a ghost. She's like Danny Phantom, all this other credit shit. Reasonably should get Thoth, you know, pretty high, but you could argue he doesn't really have any strong showcasing or shine of something more to really hail from. Then we have Thor's daughter, third child of Thor and Sif. She's really strong. Possibly credit, you know, a decent combatant, but she hasn't really proved anything. She got shitted on by Heimdall, her uncle, and doesn't really pull anything of greater height. And she did survive a blow from Milner, but to me, she's kind of all over the place to really try to constitute anything. I think Thrud has great potential to be very up, be stronger than her, two other brothers combined, her father, whatever. But she don't really have anything going for her that really sticks her out. And I feel like where I put her before was not the best, really, acknowledgement or credit of you really considering she could be a lot more. I definitely there's argument to say that Shawty could be above Atreus, but there's a mixed argument that Atreus has a lot more things to infer and capture and actual power scaling than what Thrud actually shows. Then you have this Jotunar that basically was like the battle beast of Jotunheim, and the claim of like him being a guy that was feasting on battles, was a ferocious, furious warrior. You have like so many different mixed talks about him and statements. Cause I'm kind of like, it's kind of crazy how ridiculously hyped up this guy is. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but Stuckaka is so powerful. It was said by a different word that it took the combined might of Odin and Thor, or it would need the combined might of them, Thor and Odin, which is a crazy duo, to go about taking him out. So the fact that possibly in one-on-ones, Thor is either afraid or is very wary of this dude because of his ridiculous, insatiable might and credit of, being a crash out, crack beast, like no other. That to me gives reasonable, rationalization and validation for him being such a higher grandstand than any other person, and his weight and capability of being one of not the strongest Jotunar is a great capability, you know what I'm saying? Because again, the fact that Thor and Odin could not beat him in a 1v1 and is stronger than most different Jotunars and has a ridiculous story and legend is very crazy to me. And knowing that most of the Jotuns speak always in very high credit of truth, there's a great capability that this could be the case. My problems mainly lie with it actually being shown, kind of jokes, and at the same time it kind of just being a kind of like baffling, like wild possibility that I don't really think is backed by anything besides just the fact that it's just a story told, and there's even some mixed doubt in it because even though Thor slaying all the giants we know is a little bit exaggerated, but there's a lot of validity that there's no Jotunar that could actually best Thor in the grand scope. Even Jormungandr, who we saw what he did, and he stalemated, but was shown all around demonstrably a lot more stronger definitively. So again, him being a whole build different, beast, titan, Jotunar, like he is a kaiju built motherfucker, right, of a ridiculous magnitude. Is something, but again, I don't really see concreteness to scale. Then we have Faye, who I think it's going to be a mixed matter of, perception person. Faye, I think it's very strong and has a lot of reasonable, claim and hail of being one of the most effortlessly built different, proficient, and respected warriors of all. She was remarkable. Everybody holds her in high renown. This man Kratos said that she was a better hunter on some occasions. She was a better fighter with the axe. She knew the Leviathan axe like no other. She fought Thor. Granted, there's context. And she definitely is a very much ferocious woman. But the thing is that even with all those credit of, praise and the fact that she did have a stalemate with Kratos, it's very mixed on the situations and ties. The stalemate was a great, showing of match. And Kratos does put her in high record. But so much scaling has changed from when Faye was alive, tied as well with the fact that unlike these, living credit of people in here where you can kind of infer a little bit more, Faye has a mixed bag of being very much statement driven and not very much feat or anything of really concreteness. To say, don't get it twisted, I'm not saying that disperses any possible argument or validity to say where she could be. Again, this is a very much more debatable, acknowledgement here. But I basically mean in the sense that Faye has a lot of mixed, maybe possible ways to say that she could stand to this and this person and do something, right? From being not just only a skilled warrior, being tough as nails, built different, but the way that she moved with shit was really very ambiguous. We don't really have much stuff shown about her. Maybe that will change. But to me, until I see anything really defining what she could actually be, very concrete, very solidly, I don't really know what to say. And it's also like when she fought Thor, Thor was not only drunk and she said it herself by different accounts in fame that, she was very lucky that he was drunk, and that's possibly was the only to arguably best way she could even possibly defeat him or stand against him. And their fight was in a stalemate. She didn't beat him, and the lightning tree kind of insinuates that in greater credit, right? Because like how Thor and Kratos had it, even though Thor more or less more proudly bested Kratos, even if Kratos did not entirely, get, full slaughtered easily, that man did almost get sent to the Shadow Realm when it came down to his demise. So that right there makes it a entirely different perplexity of possible stand, where I would argue that Faye could maybe again be stronger than certain versions of Kratos, even like a God of War 4 Kratos. But I think there's a lot of arguments say that she doesn't really stand very slowly, where you would expect her to be when you really look at some different mentions. And regardless of all of her hype, all of her hail, all of her love, it comes from very much reasonably noted people on creative like knowledge and worth and speaking. I hold like Brock and Sindri's talk to her, entire legacy at very high regard. I take what Kratos has to say about his own wife in good record, but they are from a not entirely biased, but a positive perspective on her that isn't really tied to open-endedness. Their perspectives on her are a mixed bag of things that they didn't all know. They did not know of all these different things. There's also the fact of the matter, it's just like, obviously they hold great respect and admiration for it. Again, I'll take their word at great merit, especially Brock and Sindri, because obviously they made Leviathan acts for her. But I'm just saying, like, again, I don't really know where that really constitutes. So I'm hoping I made clear enough why I feel the way I feel about that. Next, you have Atreus of God of War 4. One time stunning Kratos fighting alongside him, beating in this man Baldur, taking on different type of, attacks, blows, able to survive a punch from this man Baldur and not die, fighting Valkyries, doing all type of shit. And it even goes more with Atreus here. I'm trying to explain it, but simply put, Atreus is a very mixed, kind of inconsistent character. One second, he's a lot more of a weaker sense, and next second, he could be of a stronger sense. There's a level of feeling like you could argue plot relevance to plot armor for him that doesn't really have real backing of truth for why Atreus is a character that's kind of all over the place. I put him in high regards because of all these different things backing up, but not only from replaying, peeking about shit, reading, but the fact that Atreus training, in my own words of Kratos, by his own decree, there's a reasonable constitution to say that this would help him be more efficient, more technically better sound and capable than his younger self, but he's not actually given real reason to be a lot more stronger than where he was. As yes, Atreus is a lot more capable dude, and he has done a great deal of a lot to me that gives him reasonable stance to say that he can be somewhere good regard. But he really is not anything too dummy special, and unless you give him a bunch of non-mixed base equipment or stretch the bar and be very inconsistent, because again, I'm trying to be very consistent with this tier list, he doesn't really strike me as anything of greater pulling of beast. And besides Bolthorn, where we'll even have a lot of things to be discussed involving him, aka his bear form, and that's what Bolthorn means, I don't really know where you could really put him without just kind of looking a little bit goofy. And I put him at a high setting last time, and I think even though my logic is understandable from the perspective, I didn't really take in the consistent perspective, and I kind of tried to be as nice to him with the statement that Atreus should be of high regard, but I was smoking something, I'm not going to lie. But, the full push on with this, right? Jormungandr, when he's young, Jormungandr just came in and got all around disbodied by Thor, got smacked around, got weaved out, cracked to like, time before his own birth, right? My man got literally cosmically boned on the head, Taco Bell style, and doesn't really have anything to greater show from him obviously being able to even take blows from Thor and, stalemate with Thor later on or whatever mixed count, depending on how you feel, if like he instantly started stalemating with him or he got aged up or something happened. I don't know. There's a mixed creative fact that he never really actually stood strongly against Thor or anyone of greater regard to mixed regards. Don't get it twisted. I'm not saying older Yorm or just, the Yorm that we know doesn't really have a strong prevalence or presence of really being like, a person of great powerful regard. But again, he doesn't really stand as somebody of a real proud, like, definitive perspective a really case and then a possible way to analyze and unravel the scaling in a very much realistic and concrete way as to best full precisely coherently speak about this. Jormungandr can be very powerful at a young age. I'm not denying that. That's why it's too powerful / weak to scale. But there's an argument that he doesn't really have as much validity and the fine, scaling to really make a case for that. And a lot of cases, real way to do that don't really rub me off with a better possible way of peeking into the scaling or story in a way that really makes sense. And again, is the fine matter of, actual scaling stance. And it's just more like a kind of whatever mix, like showcasing that again is a very much 50-50 like sense thing. It's very flip-floppy, thing to be said. But again, I have ordered Jormungandr somewhere, so if it helps for the Jormungandr fans, I'm not going to entirely denounce him of having Koreans of scaling because obviously that would be wrong, I feel like. But it's just like, again, I have a lot of mixed matter for feeling kind of a mix off on how to strongly stance, the character somewhere. But next we have Hel, / the Queen of Helheim. I don't know if I'm saying the name right, but I'm going to try. Hizvidgard or Hasvidgard, right? Let me sound exactly right on the second one. However you say her name, Hizvidgard, Queen of Hel, Raven of Helheim. From her being queen, kind of her knowledge and capabilities do shit, right? She could be of a higher grandstand, and as a divinity person in her own right, a goddess of some type of hell and queen and all different aspects of shit, of possible just comparing the type of renowned royal people of like godly essence in comparison. She probably is something, but she never shows that. I don't really know what to really constitute her as, and there's nothing that really gives me a feel of like actual proud procedure to really go off of to really best define and consider what she is as a person of power. But you could make different like stretch arguments for again being Queen of Hell, a goddess, great sense of divinity aspect to her to try to proclaim that she could be somewhere else. But to me, again, I don't really see anything that really lays her as something of greater form to me. So that's just me. Anyway, though, moving on, and I already know that, he's going to be in whole fucking befuzzle for what's to be shown here. But again, work with me, please. Obviously, at the bottom, the fodder, we have Pandora. Simple. Just some random ass girl doesn't have anything of showcasing. Just be riding on Kratos' back and running around frantically against enemies. Might be, symbol to goddess of hope, but it's just a little girl. Sif, goddess of beauty, doesn't have anything greater from that. Kratos, as a general, natural fighting prowess will be arguably the weakest, as just, being a renowned, efficient, feared, brutal warrior, but nothing of greater sense. The Spartan King, mixed simulation of being creatively Leonidas, will be a higher grandstand than him, and going by the culling of the most strong in the Spartan culture, right? Reasonably would have the Spartan King be higher. The Barbarian King was going about defeating Kratos and would have killed him if it wasn't from calling out for Ares. Ares, destroy my enemies and my life is yours. The iconic case, pretty much unbounding himself to an endless nightmare in life, right? He reasonably from not just only besting him and makes account of, his title of being a barbarian king that ran for multiple people. I think there's a lot of arguments to say that he's beyond Leonidas in this version. You could make an argument that, this makes him higher than Kratos, not a Spartan king, but I feel like there's very much reasonable validity to say that he is, right? Hildisvini, because of his archery, skill, fame, and magical possible accessories, could just outshoot and dominate the rest of the people. Perseus, because of him being able to turn invisible, technique, skill, and having kind of decent reputation of being somewhat of a formidable fighter and champion, I think could just outmaneuver Hildisvini unless if he gets like a good shot. I think Perseus would just slap him up before he could do anything. Persian King, right? Sorry, someone throw a pause. Took for a good minute without water. Persian King, right? He, not just only from his hacks and magic, but skill set, the fact that there seem like a level of like great experience veteranar with him, and the fact that he felt so confident in a lot of shit they did. Granted, it could just be his, ego, his arrogance, his pride, but not only the fact that he has the most crazy magical representation from a mortal standpoint, but seen as well be make creative having some form of a fight against Kratos, not super, not anything of real scalable, but the fact that he was somewhat of like a obstacle, like he was an actual grandstand, actual being of some actual reckon of actual hands. So to me, I think that clears him out, and the fact that Perseus, I don't think will be able to handle his hack of Persian myth. Granted, there's an argument of Perseus being invisible could one up on him, but I don't see Perseus going instantly for decapitation to kill him and trying to be consistent in mixed ground, trying to be all realistic about the personalities appeal. But Atreus, we got Ragnarok is here. Like his younger self, I'm kind of mixed to really concrete scale him. Everything I have to say about God of War 4 Atreus is a little bit more bigger fueled by God of Ragnarok. There's a lot of reasons to say that he stands as a pretty peak regard, a fighter, champion of the Jotunnar, Loki, god of mischief, but he, to me, doesn't have anything that really definitely takes him as a greater form of combatant and skill stance. He could be easily threatened by a lot of different things. He is in big fear of a lot of motherfuckers. Could easily be put out of commission some occasions. He's not the most physically demanding strong, but his archery, his skill, his background, his feats, his scaling, what he's done, and his very, wacky regard of shit, and the fact that he could turn to a wolf, right? I do think would kind of outdo a lot of people. I think he's a very smart, proficient, high wit motherfucker that could just style out on people and best them. But that's really it. Next, in monster / creature, is some creatures a different matter of, obviously, people, a different mix, record of decent hell, stronger than general mortals, qualm of shit. Like we have Medusa, turn people into stone, being a being for a different record. I think, depending on how you perceive, with her in gameplay representation and mythicization, she can instantly just turn people into stone and just outspeed people through that. And nobody on the tier below has faced that. Granted, Atreus possibly could push past, but I see more times than not Atreus being more easily be turned to stone if again we make it go by gameplay, and everyone else higher would either be so much more stronger that they would be able not only to possibly burst out from the stone or body her before she could do it, because going by mixed gameplay and mixed accounting of the fact that if you don't break people instantly in the game, correct me if I'm wrong, they can break out. And sometimes, your own usage of stone shit don't work on certain people. It might be a gameplay, glitch or gameplay restriction. That's really where you would base that. But I think that's a reasonable assertion to say that, you can't really outdo this shard unless you are so much more greater, faster, and stronger. And I don't think Atreus really all around is. Granted, if Atreus got a good all around clean greater shot, he probably could take out Medusa all around. So you could make arguments that, Atreus could push past that and mix back some of the people here all around. But I think there's a lot of reasonable mixed decree that, just looking at them from a strength, capabilities, and hacks perspective, that Atreus could not full-fledged beat them by themselves. You could make a gameplay or mix different, fighting stance argument, but I hope I've made it again clear very concretely and sufficely why, there's a little bit of deeper levels to go with each tier and possibility of pulling something that, again, I think in the grand scope of Atreus could not outlive or outwork these people, especially when you got people being plural like ancients and trolls. Like, I don't believe Atreus is doing that. No, like simple as that. Again, I'm going to former sites to explain this, but to keep moving on, you have Callisto, the grandmama to Atreus, aka the case of this man Kratos' mom turned into a horrid abomination. Physically, behold her in case of strength, and the fact that she would turn into a cursed monster by Zeus. I like to say that gives her makes decent regard of being a beast that should be of some level of strength. And it's man because Kratos holding back and having to kill his own mom, but there's a credit of the fact of like she was giving him a little bit of challenge. We go by QT events, so yeah, like probably would just all around this body Atreus and Medusa, obviously in the grand scope, ancient, simple, a form of interesting elements and usage of magic that pose a great deal of problem, can outrange people, are very strong. They're already rock, stone, or whatever the fuck type of things, and a lot of different ways of hurting them possibly cannot be had unless you're so much greater, stronger, or you have experience with them, or bigger, which is going to be a lot of the arguments for this entire tier. Trolls, simple as that, way larger, whole different matter of strength, and mix our case of magic and hacks can help them utilize not just their strength to a greater form, but also be able to be so astronomically built different that they pretty much just bully those beneath them. Gorilla, because Rapat, different magic and size should just outdo a lot of them, but from her fighting prowess not being too much of anything of greater record, and she old as shit, possibly cannot stand full greater. Then you have Pandora's Guardian, the big ass case of Transformers as Bull, should just run through them, literally just body them entirely and just discard them like insects. Goldtopper, mainly from being able to hurt Kratos and do something of greater worth, and the fact that Goldtopper is probably like the strongest form of whatever his race of this lion bull is, and credit having some instant capabilities of strength and mixed bag, might. I would like to say should all around fight best them in comparison, but that's really it. Just having a little bit of greater, ferocity than Snake Beast, way bigger than a lot of them from what I know, and should just devour and gobble them entirely whole and just run through them. Spider Beast, same thing. Fire Beast literally would just incinerate everybody. Scorpius, durability, way too much variety of different stuff, and is very hacky. The Kraken, way too large, way too much mass. Hydra, as large, but has a lot more to go with it and has better statements. Electro Leviathan, same shit. Affected Aegon, same stuff. Greater range. Olympian Sentinel, greater magic, greater stuff, more versatility, if I remember. Aegon, for statements that actually helping the Great War, being feared fame, big Goliaths, and having just everything I said before. Cilia, same shit, as well with the statements of, actual Greek myth to be considered as a thing. Should just be of a higher beastful proportion. Uriel, bigger, all different greater shit, had better scaling comparison to Kratos, and was said to be a stronger Gorgon than her sister coming from on the sets of Medusa, right? Because it's an actual person in Greek myth, right? But there's that. You have, I forgot how to say his name. I had it on the tip of my tongue. In this case, how he says it. Harzil or Horzil? I don't know. The dragon, obviously, from God of War 4. Size, lightning, all type of shit, can fly, and just got way more craziness than what these people could ever imagine. The Bridge Keeper, not only from being, the Bridge Keeper of the dead, gave some form of a fight, has a lot of crazy hacks, and will be just a stronger troll with greater magic. I would like to say should be able to this push past all these people and best them. The only problem would be obviously some of the size of these beings, some of the places to fight them, and other credit of that. But he could slowly just, override them with more and more magic, pull from all different affinities shit. It'd be very hard for a lot of them to kill him, and he'd just be unsurmountable, built different regard. But dude, don't get it twisted. He was killed by seeming just general physical killing. He was just generally fucking slaughtered. Man got pierced through the skull and got burned through it. Brutal as fuck. But he seemed like a whole different pillar of both and possibly power and shit that I feel like would just all around best him. You could try to make an argument he could be switched, and especially when it comes down to the dragon thing, right? But yeah, I think that's where he should be. Next tier we have low god to demigod, starting with intro Kratos, right? From a little bit of his standing to the Furies, different shit. He's went through the experiences and stuff, involving being, a agent of this man Ares, an agent of chaos. I like to say that he should be able to best a lot of them and push past, especially with the situations, other shit at hand. He's faced different beasts and monsters, and how he stood in the actual battle against one of these beings. I think that he would all around best. I think the only problem is it depends on the scenario. So this is very dependent on context, but give him equal footing to where he's not entirely at advantage, but not entirely at disadvantage. He should beat them, and it's just off of consistency, because I know that they're all bigger than him and all this shit, but it's big Kratos. He should win regardless. Hercules, though, this is considering Hercules in this sense being before he became the fame, renowned, magnified to all 12 labors, because all the 12 labors happen, boom, in different regard of a behemoth and dude, right? Big Dunzel, a person that is very perplexing to say to be, very much high and mighty, even if he's a lot more like fleshy human than the full grade capture, being a demigod of a high grade reckon of like a, dude that's able to demolish and dominate for all different hordes of different capabilities. The fact is that he's just so much more physically greater and stronger, has better hail and account from, again, in his events of doing the 12 labors, and has faces just many creatures or odds as Kratos, and I just feel like him being not only way stronger, better accolades, and even though the skill matters a little bit debatable, I think he would all around best him. You could make a case that he should beat him, but that's how I feel. Theseus, weaponry, hacks, all different assortment should push past, these two. The Dark Elf King, from his title, creative effective, being very mixed skilled. He did sneak up on Kratos, and he did pull somewhat of a decent mixed bag fight, and was able to react to some extent to mixed variety. I feel like he should just be way out of his league. He also can fly. He has a lot more hacks, I would say. So there you go. Light Elf Queen, same regards. Way more wacky and crazy. Demos, from now I don't even know what context was hurting Kratos. The Spartan shield and spear, the magic and mixed skill prowess, I think would push him, to all around get the win over them. Kringhoff has all of his other case of executioners, inquisitors, and knights, and would just, I feel like, just outdo almost every way of the fight with these dudes, right? And this man would outrange, outbox, outfight, just a whole different rack of all trades, rolling beast, you know what I'm saying? Where this man is out here clocking out all different charades and crazy activities to be said. My man's going to be a whole different, magnitude of whirlwind sorcery and magic, to the point where he would just basically cut these people down to size of like ants and just step on them. There's nothing that he could do it to him, right? But then there's a mixed debate about Gaster. Is that supposed to be here? No, it's Castor and Pollux. My bad. Castor and Pollux. Sorry for the preset reading. Because of their like teleportation being akin to like on that hit time skip shit, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're actually using time and manipulating it to blitz around faster than you can even see. That would big help. There's also the fact that they could use that to break him down, put pressure on him, mix him up, and eventually deliver the ultimate slap of him. You could argue he could be so, a whole different matter of, strength that, he could get eventually hands on him and best him. But I could see Castor and Pollux pulling through to all around best him, especially whatever they did, mixed crate standing, to Kratos, and having creative, assets and a lot of their ways of pulling different, attacks and activity that is entirely built off the back of pretty much surprising your enemy before they can even realize it. And this would be out of whatever King Hoff, even undead, even be able to actually, conceive, and like miles of like actual like sorcery or shit, because everything that Hoff does is very physically shining. And even though his big boast of power, to me, all really Hoff is doing is just whipping around and just doing all different type of like, just slugging. While Castor and Pollux, for how they demonstrated and fought Kratos to whatever mixed scaling regard, actually demonstrated some better maneuvering, boxing, shit, I would say high class skill. Like, they know what they're doing. To me, Hoff is really whatever flinging shit, and anything that he has to throw at him, he'll never be able to catch him. And he's not that strong, at least I would argue, to the point where he can be defeated. And yeah, that's how I feel. But anyway, Erlich, aka the Barbarian King, resurrected with all these different assortment of power, is not only way stronger, stood to a better Kratos, is very fearsome. I believe that he would all around best Castor and Pollux, even with all their shit. And again, he's just so different, career, like, for any of that fucking, general skill shit. Some occasions, granted, he does show a great essence of skill, and he was on one with the Blacker Force energy to fight Kratos. But like, again, he's on a whole different, uncomparable stand to Castor and Pollux or anyone below, with how much even record of strength and capabilities that he has, to where he would all around just bully through people and be able to eventually, in a very quick time, just bury people before him. But yeah, then you have Maguire, Diamond, Tisvicini, and eventually Electo, kind of all being scalable and maybe interchangeable. From Maguire scaling good deal to Kratos in Ascension, even though she did get all around defeated and bested, and he did take away her other arm, right, and shit like that. Maguire does have a lot of crazy, capabilities to be used within mixed hacks, skill, prowess is very proficient, and can dog, a lot of different aspects of people with, having greater range, skill, regard, and hail, tied as well with the fact that, she holds great ties to, a decent respected group, even if they kind of got big shun and, disdain for the fact that they had arguably one of the most easiest ways of possibly being about besting the odds against Kratos, and kind of flopped. They dropped the ball. Diamond, with the greatest pair of sorcery, should outdo them. Tsusune is able to pull a lot of crazy shit with just that, and it's just on their essence of, greater hacks and capabilities of very high spectral shit that I feel like would just, entirely desecrate people before they could even get a chance to actually possibly hit her and do damage. And, pretty resourceful shawty. Freyr, though, is a very mixed form person. Freyr, not only from the record of, being very undefinitive and set in stone on different mix like hell of scaling and capabilities, but has a few different noteworthy things to put him possibly somewhere. It's kind of mixed for me. I almost put him in too powerful size or weak to scale, not only because of the fact that it is demonstrated and shown in lore, said verbatim, and even comparison mixture to, say his mixed bag properly adapted from Norse myth, that he physically is not very strong. He's not anything of big, regard. He doesn't really got that much going for him in the physical demand. He could be very easily, if he wanted to, pieced up and brutally, fucked up if he wanted to, with getting beat the shit out of, getting set on fire by Ehrenar. He got pulled up on and got jumped in Vandenheim by some pussy ass niggas, yes, but did get absolutely dog walked by them and could not do anything of greater regard, right? Like Freyr, simply put, like, was not really anything on the physical regards, right? But with Ingrud, yes, he did showcase decent, sense of prowess, excellent skill, flashiness, stylistic. He's very clean, sabery with that sword. But Ingrud is pulling a lot of the weight. He's putting a lot of work. He does know how to use Ingrud to great record, but Ingrud has a mind of her own, and she's doing a lot of the more hefty lifting. He was able to dodge different Ragnarok attacks, stave off Ragnarok. He was able to do a lot of cool shit, and he did put in decent amount of work by all accounts during Ragnarok, and he definitely is one formidable, profound, warrior when he really gets on. He definitely was doing his thing to a great record, but he didn't really haul in and really stand to the most ridiculous toe-to-toe regard against anybody, and kind of, whatever words of a guy named Kratos, if he actually tried to clash with anybody on a physical regard, he could not do that. He could not shake an entire realm or put in big level of, like, standing 10 toes down on really standing on business to the same record of, like, what Kratos was doing against Baldur when they both were standing toe to toe, crunching against body, pulling most type of, fucking Chad alpha, like, lion versus tiger level extent of full bloody hell match without entirely getting fodderized. Like, a lot of niggas could one-tap him, but it's only because of Ingrud, the superior speed, and maybe mixed argument of, skill to say that he could be here. And I think you can make arguments for him being interchangeable and, like, almost anything. Very debatable, tiering, lists, whatever. But I think this is fine. Electos here, not only from being seen as the strongest of the fates, her hacks, her magic, her capabilities, and the fact that she can do a lot of shit that could just dunzo a lot of people, unless you don't have a mind, and unless you're of a whole different, powerful regard, or unless you can push past mental hacks of that sort, or you can outdo things of this type of realm of capability of making, where she actually makes entire universal pocket dimensions that are contributed to the fact of the matter of your mind, being displaced of greater soul in it, I think can reasonably get them the Constitution to not just be, as a whole, as a group, ridiculous, but, electo crazy as fuck. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, next Colossus, power with some low spec of Zeus's power, size, capabilities of strength, reasonably should be beyond a lot of them, and I don't really see a way for anyone below to actually be able to best this big ass literal fucking whole Colossus is an understatement. Nah, this motherfucker was so big and large. He took up a whole great deal of a Greek city. I mean, the fact that the Colossus actually existed at one point is crazy. But yeah, nobody's gonna take out this Empire State Building sized ass being like no other. Dharma, same thing. Whoppy do ridiculously big. Size of a continent ass giant. No way from that actually full putting down. It seemed like you would have to take away the source contributing to the credit of his, existence, which is his brain. Right? And like he's just so astronomically bigger that niggas is getting dwarfed in height and everything. Like, look at this Kratos if he got the fucking Home Depot 7s ass nigga. Like, no. The Furies, though, mainly from illusions, working together and teamwork would be the best bet to best them. But you could make an argument that Dahmer and the Colossus either mixed bag too powerful or way out of the league for them to really do anything. I think you can argue to a great regard that there's a great capability for them to best them. But you could make a case that they're just too big, so, maybe I might change this and just do this. But, again, I could see an argument to say that all this shit together, them as a team, could figure it out. But, I'll be honest, I kind of see it more with the Colossus more than Dahmer. I think Dahmer is just a little bit too fucking big and way too proportionally, built different. I think he would be too much, a little bit out of their realm of understanding to best. Colossus, it's a little bit more easy. It's a little bit accessible to say that I could actually beat him. Dahmer, though, absolutely not. And I thought Colossus, mainly because of the fact that, having a little power of Zeus would give mixed constitution for being of a higher realm, possibly in power stance, to maybe say that he could best some different higher people, but I don't actually think that, especially actually reading exact accounting for how much power Zeus put into the Colossus, not being that hefty, the fact that doesn't really represent anything in greater form, and the fact that there's a lot of reason to say that niggas is beyond compare when we talk about that, and the fact that I didn't really consider the fact of it being a very set in stone three-way scaling of it being primordials, Titans, Olympians, Zeus, Kratos, kind of set in stone, on that. But the three-way scaling, again, the primordials, Titans, Olympians is very much set in stone. But then of Ascension Kratos not only allows him to have the teleportation capabilities, scaling over all these people, besting all these odds, crazy mind hacks. I see the same way that he was able to defeat, Colossus, Furies, and even though Dahmer will be a very much hard, long-fought battle, I do think Kratos would eventually find a way to take him out, or just would outlive Dahmer to the point where I don't really see a way Dahmer could actually efficiently kill him, to be honest. But you could make all the type of arguments you want on the validation that Kratos can never find a way to properly kill Dahmer, because, again, he's too fucking big. He's ridiculously massive. But I don't know. Just a little creative, kind of wild statement to even say that as well. Pause, but on the real, that's kind of the stance that I have there. You could argue all day, but there's no way Dahmer can kill Kratos, and I think it's only a matter of time until Kratos kills Dahmer, right? And we have Carrion, the Keeper of the Dead, scale decent great form to Kratos and different shit from his hacks and capabilities of different mixed matter and having a lot more wild versatility and artillery to be gauged. I feel like he would just override Kratos a little bit too much, and this goes for anyone, beneath him. He could figure out ways to more effectively best him. But I think there's some argument to say that, Carrion is a very mixed bag person to scale, but has a lot more solid, assets of maybe harrowing from something of unique regard to more or less confidently say that, yes, he could overrun best these people. But in God of War 1, Kratos at the intro does shit of way greater regard than he does, to where in an actual fight I think he could best him the same way he bested him before. I think he has a lot more going with him, more of the experience and accolades going for him. And to see that start or whatever, I just see Kratos pushing past, carry on, especially with, again, all the context to be laid. Then you have Kratos of Ghost of Sparta, who should just be one up with the experience and capabilities to be had. Chains of Olympus, the exact same. Simple three-way, maybe makes debatable scaling, but simple as that. We have Kratos in of God of War with tapping not possibly entirely into his God essence, but being greater record hold with capabilities, experience, record lades, did all these different type of quests, did all these different type of cases, clashes and shit, and was able to fight beings beyond the comprehension of others before him to a greater form. And even if the people before him are mixed parts of him that know of it, he, to me, over just the showcasing of that in the actual moment, is way beyond the comprehension of a lot of niggas just comparatively pit to pit, ball for ball. Kratos to the gauntlet not only was able to piece up and bang out with more than great renowned people. This is a gauntlet of Zeus. He can utilize a lot of crazy shit. You give him the armor in the actual picture, probably make him more durable. But even discarding that, there's a fact of the matter is that he uses Gauntlet to pull some crazy, interesting, maneuvers against Atlas. So Kratos Doomfist over here, right, should just sack a lot of people. Persephone, right, will be reasonably beyond that shit. Not only from the fact that, simply put, she has a lot of different revere, hail, stance, and statement about being a crazy motherfucker with great range, great advantage, and being the first tentacle Valkyrie-like shawty, this dark angel butterfly. Got a lot of wacky shit that could, all around outdo Kratos and a lot of shit. And I just feel like, with him mainline using the gauntlet, could not really hang with Persephone enough to the point where he could fully put in work. If they were just fighting heads up formally, I think Kratos with the gauntlet could win. But I see Persephone using a lot of her greater, advantages fully to the max and just outduking, Kratos on a lot of occasions. Thanatos Beast, aka his greater shapeshift form, should just be miles beyond them. Not just from being like an actual god of a greater form, right? But also just the shape-shifting, size, all that shit, flight, even, correct me if I'm wrong. Thanatos, simple, god of the dead, or death itself in greater form, because technically, you could say Hades is that. He's more of the god of the underworld and the whole entire concept of, the realm of the dead, more than just being dead people in greater sense. Thanatos, heralding death, being the personification, the antithesis of death walking, I think would be reasonably above. Kratos and Deimos, obviously went about famously go about full-fledged defeating him. Granted, obviously, it is with the fact of the matter of Deimos possibly dying, but their pair is very much, uncomparable and would be very sufficient at dominating and all-around best in the odds, even if Deimos were to die or Kratos had to tap into something else. I think it's very reasonable that he would best him. Then we have him, obviously, at the end with reflection, all different creative, scaling shit, and, in the end, did defeat Thanatos, but obviously his enraged version should be a higher pull of shit than that, and would reasonably give him the grace of, besting Thanatos in the end in the grand scope. Well, yeah. And before anyone says it, in case it might seem like a mixed bag contradiction, don't get it twisted. There's an argument that just being Olympians and greater form people in general should best, the primordials, but there's an argument that, number one, they don't actually demonstrate anything on the same regard. Two, it's not actually shown exactly the Olympians at the time or not that should be that, and unless they actually scale higher than another mixed record. And as well, the fact that Thanatos is a character that's never really said to be a god that fully went about that. Also, he technically existed before the Olympians. Just because you exist before them doesn't mean that you're stronger than them, doesn't mean you're in the same essence of strength or capability, because Thanatos, just as a being, is again the holder between a bunch of people's lives, the bringer of death, caretaker of death. He's the Grim Reaper. He's really like death from Puss in Boots and title and even just presence. So his pure existence needed to exist to fundamentally form the greater case of, order and, ordeal shit to the best, regard. So again, just because it exists before and is a record of, title of being the god of death, for the Olympians. He was not the original 12. He's not the mainline counting, and he's definitely not a form of Olympian that fought in the Great War. He's not a god that even fought in there and has a great sense of, tie to that shit. So, yeah, to me, I don't really feel like that costume to him as being higher. Plus, I would just make the before hair scaling, very weird and not very consistent, set in stone. And unless like you want to die in the hood, that's a greater strong sense argument to even gauge. I again just feel like that would not only just disconnect on a lot of fathom of like not just consistency but realisticy, but also just sounds fucking stupid. I'm just gonna keep it a butt. Like, no, nigga, I don't agree with that at all. That's entirely dumb, right? But I'm not gonna get into more of that. Next tier we have celestial gods, right? So with celestial gods, it's obviously the four primordials: chaos, aura, Ceto, Uranus, or Uranus, right? With obviously being, in technical order for who best is who said to kill who said to do this. Oral, activity would kind of be a very mixed thing to say about if he actually defeated Chaos, because it seemed like from the last time it was shown with him fighting Chaos, that's seeming to be the person. Ceto directly did mink this man Aura, or maybe it was Chaos. I don't know. At the end of the day, all four of them fought, but Uranus was seen as top dog of them in comparison, as he was top dog primordial. He was the god of everything, Olympus. He was the personification, of Olympus and arguably the universe at one point beforehand. That's what literally Uranus in the case for Greek or Roman myth is. So Uranus reasonably should be that. But again, like I said, Ouros, right, is a very mixed thing. As Oro is mixed if he actually killed Chaos or not. So you can interchange them regardless. He should be at the top. Like, there should be no argument of who, but like, no, like, he should be here. Argue about that if you want, but that's reasonable accounting for, the creative where he should be in the case for his power stand. Like I said, it's kind of mixed with water sense of, actually being over and Ceto this or that. But they all fought at the beginning of time, or time when it wasn't even, a thing. So, yeah, suppose that. But now for Beast God to Titans, right? You have Rhea at the bottom, mother of Zeus, mother to a great deal of the gods, grandmama to a lot of people, godmother. This is mainly going off the fact if the whole three-way scaling. Really, she don't have scaling. That goes with Hera too. This is more going by the boast of like, okay, like these are mothers, these are people of high status, they're gods, right? So like they arguably should be stapled as, being people of higher reckoning and of, power and capabilities in comparison. But, there's an argument why, like, for all we know, Hera is just like Sith, mortal as hell, even if she has a status for something else. Because I'll be honest, I mean, again, this is kind of comparing to other verses. Because you are a god or because you're of this mixed title does not actually make you anything better than another. And actual power scaling and feats that display that should get that. But to me, I just feel like, it's not as much confirmed and set in stone that because you are a god and you are, from Asgard, or you're the Aesir, you're from Vanaheim, you're from this place, that reasonably gives you reasonable perception to be this and that. But this is more going off the mixed matter of that in comparison to Greek myth, that they should be higher than the case of, the primordials. But obviously we're talking about God of War, so take that how you wish. Hephaestus, same thing, giant, forger, all that shit. All the Titans of mixed regard. I heard Perseus has a mixed statement showcasing within the third party of Kratos and crushing Helios and flinging that motherfucker like a fucking softball. He tossed that motherfucker like he was changed, bro. Man, it's like third, maybe fourth strongest Titan. Gaia, reasonably, queen, mother to a lot of the Titans, goddess to Titan of Earth. Kronos and God of War 1, I mean, I say he shouldn't arguably scale because he doesn't do anything. But I can understand the fact of the matter that he's just like Kronos in God of War 3 without doing that much. But he was full slave bounded to Pandora's box. And, this basically talking about God of War 3 now version, even though he is washed and is very much degraded from his prime version that I have all the way up here. I think there's a lot of mixed arguments to say proudly that, he has a great array of reasonable stance and foundation of being a very top tier pinnacle of powerhouse, He was very much still feared and has a great record, laid on the fact that he is a guy that is one oafish, terrifying motherfucker. Nobody could best the Titan. Took a great deal of time to defeat him. Kronos did, castrate his own father and defeat him. And Kronos is ridiculous. I don't really have much more to say besides that. And because of his chained up shit, because of the situation, Kratos' statement about "you send me to my death," mad ass shit. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that's reasonable, but again, argue if you want about that, I guess, to a greater record. But for the record, again, it's not contradicted. It's by the reasonable validity that Titans could still be of high regard, and the fact that Titans still somewhat scaled and stood tall against the gods, and that the Great War was not one-sided just because the gods as a whole is stronger, and it also means a little bit more deeper than just the Great War, but as a whole. But again, mixed validity of that. So Dionysus, Hestia, Demeter, Nyx, all these people should have mixed reasonable perception to be all around stronger and greater. But yeah, this is mainly off of, again, title. Nyx, goddess of the night, gets countered by Helios and Stone. I thought mainly because all different array of possible mixed perception of hacks of the night and proclaim of being, a high praised deity and primordial essence as night and darkness has always existed, and Nyx always that she would be of high renowned prowess. But I kind of mix, interpreted, that real form of the, validation. So I feel like that's a reasonable stance. Nemesis, goddess of vengeance, reasonably should be here. Apollo, using the sun, god of music, same thing. Artemis, she's a better archer than him in actual myth. Nike, goddess of victory, helps in ties of, goddess of war with Athena. Hercules, unarmed without the cestus. Now, this is considering, obviously, him just being unarmed, unarmored. He seems to be very lacking in good durability or any sense of that sort of real standing, pair for pair, bang for bang ordeal. But I feel like in the credit for why he's even so much lower than where you guys see me have him, it's not just the fact that he doesn't really show enough real merit of skill and greater capability. This could be because of him being corrupted, or the fact that in truth Hercules is not a very overarchingly greater skilled individual. He plays really around using his physical strength to bench people, and I think that would work to a great deal. And obviously scaling to a Kratos of mixed different hail and doing great deal of shit and being very strong, he should be something. But I think there's a lot of arguments to say that Hercules unarmed is a very wonky mixed perception person that doesn't really do that much, and Kratos did have his own Nemean cestus, and he got easily bodied by them, showing that he's not as durable as the Nemean cestus. He's not very durable enough against a lot of greater shit, and Kratos is able to take the Nemean cestus all around fine. Don't get into it. Kratos do get bombed by them, and you can knock him off the map, and you can do all this different type of shit against Kratos, right, from Hercules' perception. But this man, Kratos, takes the Nemean cestus a lot more easier than Hercules. Hercules seems to be a lot more easily opened up and pieced up by that, meaning that he's not only not as durable as his actual weapons, but he's not a durable, very much demigod to godlike foe, and it's not really that strong. And it's, even if you want to argue physically stronger than Kratos, it's not as skilled, not as formidable, and a lot of his shit is really carried by his weaponry, showcasing that a lot of what he does is carried by him utilizing weaponry and different assortment of shit. It is not a true showcasing of his actual prevalence and skill. Then we have Kratos, a fallen god. I was very mixed in my perception about him being post from God of War 3. He does have a little essence of hope, by the words of Corey Barlog, but just barehanded, mixed with his own skill merit, should just all around best these people and be able to find a way to defeat them in the same way like with Ascension or something else, but of high regard and calling, and the type of people that he's faced, the type of people he's beat, the Blades of Chaos, all that shit, I feel like should give him sufficely the win. Then we have God Kratos weakened to a mortal state, to arguably a demigod state, wherever case you want to proclaim him to be. But from not just his armor, experience, weaponry, capabilities, I think he would all around strongly, all around best, everyone before him, and find a way to defeat them as he's done before. You have Freya, we got War 4, utilizing mainly just, defense and different mixed techniques and capabilities of that sort, and being efficient hunter and fighter. I do think there's an argument that she could either fully use the environment around her and all her hacks demonstrated, to best everybody, outlive people, immobilize people, or kill people eventually. But I could understand why you would say Freya from God of War 4 is a very up and at 'em like person, is very flip floppy, kind of 50-50 case of like stance of where she should actually scale. But I don't know. Then Broken Freya should just be a little bit above, a more fighting shoddy, more frenzious D1 crash out, bloody mad shoddy. She was able to somewhat maybe like I don't know harm or hold something against Kratos at the start of God of War Ragnarok, which is really what this version of Freya is. But she doesn't have fully her fighting spirit. She is a very untamed, very wild moving animal, and is Pool was like the most highest revered level of like not just magical and possibly combat skill coming back into form, but doesn't really have any true take of really that kind of like real dog in them, more proficient, redefining what it means to be tragedy turned triumph like Freya would eventually be, right? So yeah, I couldn't really tell you. Kratos of God of War 2 at base, not only being resurrected by his own will, reform, has a lot more shit going for him, does a lot more throughout God of War 2 until the end, to reasonably give me the feeling that he has a lot of credible stance and being a whole different, array of crazy shit, right, as a fighter and as a combatant, to where he could reasonably, concretely, destroy and dominate a lot of people before him and push through anything that they got. God of War 4 intro, though, I can see an argument on saying that God of War 2 is stronger looking at it, but the only reason why I first did that, right, and have a mixed thought on it, is the fact that God of War 4 Kratos at the start, even though yes, has not fought in a long time, doesn't really do fighting, is very reluctant, holds back, has a lot of confliction, has a lot of regret, a lot of depression. It seems like him fighting force wise, and just his start against Baldur, who where I put Baldur at, even though there's a lot of build up for him, I think has a lot of credibility to say that he's all around over his younger self at this time. But I can see a lot of mixed validity to perspective, like of arguably yes, even though he has the Leviathan axe and he does a greater form of shit than what you think God of War 2 might do, God of War 2 would be a lot more dead sight, dead on, and wanting to pulverize his older self. And I think the only big argument you could try to make proposally is that because of the better skill, experience, and capabilities and accolades that God of War 4 would all around best him, I think it's kind of like a 50-50. I could see why you could say Kratos would beat him, but I all around see Kratos of God of War 2 coming, lift the dub all around in the grand scope fight and just outlasting him. Plus, even though the Leviathan axe I would say is all around greater superior in case of Ting, the Blades of Chaos, or what he has at this time, are still just as versatile, just as ridiculous and busted as his own shit. So yeah, God of War Kratos with the Blade of Olympus, even if you want to say that he drained a great deal of his powers into it or not, him with the Blade of Olympus and putting a great deal of that shit into it, right, is ridiculous. Yeah, and he has the Blade of Olympus, could wipe a lot of people. He arguably could one-tap a lot of these people to ridiculous regard, Malika's Black Blade style, and I think would push through people. The reason why I have Modi and Magni over, right, especially Magni, is not only because they in some way were able to stun, give a fight, overpower, or be somewhat of a challenge to Kratos, but as well this the fact that I believe that they both have their own ways of being able to not only stun lock Kratos, put him down, and best him before he could utilize it, and the fact that I think all around in the fight there's a lot of competitive gauge to say that they could all around best him. More or less Magni, I could see an argument that Kratos could push past Modi, but I believe that if Modi started off the fight with that shit, even though, to be fair, not entirely in character, I believe that that will happen. But again, I could see your own argument to suggest that him having the Blade of Olympus by default should push him beyond. But I think not only the fact that, again, he a great deal drained his power, and maybe not all of his godly power off ripping too, he got injured by a very godly thing. Because that's also an argument that if he potentially drained all his power into the Blade of Olympus and everything else is immortal confines, Kratos can still be hurt by mortal merit. So there's an argument that if Modi hits this nigga once, he might be out here getting blasted into another stratosphere. So, I'm actually going to stand with that. That I believe that there's just so much a different amount of durable, decently skilled to say concretely that they would just best him. Like, not even possible to even, like, see, a way to actually be bested. But then Bolthorn, I think, would beat both of them individually. It's a very mixed toss-up, but they could actually, defeat Bolthorn together. I think Magni and Modi showed great teamwork, and against this big-ass bear, I believe they would probably, like, jump the shit out of Atreus as a bear. I think Bolthorn is mixed credit of, scaling, not only from the fact that Bolthorn got defeated by a start of, Gow Ragnarok Kratos. Bolthorn has mixed scaling to other people. He kind of does whatever. I think Bolthorn is just kind of this big feral, raging beast and doesn't really have anything to really stand to. And if it wasn't for out of nowhere in the mix of a big, already ongoing battle with a bunch of collide and the fact that, Bolthorn kind of got the upper hand by attacking whoever he killed, being Hurst or missed, in a kind of out of nowhere mixed portion, I feel like he wouldn't actually in a one-on-one or two-on-one to finally actually best the odds against some people, as not only does he fight in very random succession, he's not very smart or strategical, he all around can get outdone, out-muscled, out-wrestled, out-boxed by someone of greater caliber. If you have as much strength as Kratos, which I'd argue Magni and Modi greatly do, right? Especially when we talk about them being, under their father, they would proudly, in every sense of the way, be able to perfect against Bolthorn together. And I could see them pulling what those guys, who shout out to them, surviving an actual bear attack did to Bolthorn, beating its ass, or at least repelling Bolthorn, demoralizing him. They also got better hacks, electricity, they got better skill. Like, I just feel like that's what's going to get a lot of people to win. Skill, hacks, and it just keeps getting crazy the more and more we go on, right? So, yeah, simple as that. But, yeah, like, Magni and Modi should be obvious. Like, I feel like that's very reasonable, right? The Fire Steeds and Helios, not just only from the range, flight, and craziness, and that light is built different. Raider back in the day, flashbang simulator, absolutely fucking ridiculous, absolutely crazy. So I feel like there's a lot of reasonable stance to say that they're just way beyond the comprehension of this motherfucker and would put him down for the count. And yeah, Kratos with the box amp not only is big as shit, has, his own blades, could catch Helios lacking, I think, by, obviously the scaling chain, the speed, will be able to react to it. It's not even necessarily that people here can react to it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm more saying it's very octane, and it would probably be fast as shit and very much put niggas down. Plus, for a lot of people here, it would be a little bit out of their league of comprehension. It did stumble Kratos back, and he was able to somewhat react to it and can react to people that can react to the light, simple cross-run case, scaling. But, yeah, I just think, Helios would get fodderized in the end. Athena is here not only from her greater goddess status in comparison to a lot of different mixed, insinuation and reveredness that is taking a great deal of Greek myth and makes a word of people that's very statemently. So Athena, I think, has a lot of credit for her being the goddess of strategic war and her stance and the validity of who she is, and being in rivalry to Ares, which is mainly by their title, by religious belief, and matter for stance in something, gaining her reasonable factor of reasonable overbesting, right, to say that she is arguably better. But the thing is, unlike in Greek myth, even though, like in God of War, never actually clash with each other, for the forbiddenment and the fact that clashes between gods are catastrophic beyond compare, and unlike, with God of War as well, there's a reasonable fact that Athena never wished for open form conflict, but was never afraid to go about it. She was never afraid to put up the dukes like shit. But in actual Greek myth, Athena bested Poseidon for ownership, aka, praise and, basically religious testimony over a city. Athena has been multiple times counted, acquired, greater form of like statements and, renown and arguable praise, and being a woman of higher stand of skill and a reputation on Olympus than Ares, and that being a big stinging reason why he despises Athena and wants to prove a point that he can eradicate Athens, he can lay nothing but smack down destruction, bring it to its knees, prove that he's the better God, rule through the battlefield effortlessly, vigorously, with no case of possible, counter to be had. And Ares is staying the crop of being a crybaby with a mass ego the size of his armies that would deliver whole new level of hellish hate to prove a point. So there's an argument, not just that, the statements at hand, the fact that Ares has better run of statements, feats, hacks, and capabilities. I think even if you want to argue Athena is more skilled, it should not put down the man in overarching clash, pit to pit. So yeah, simple as that to most concurrently, say. But then you have Kratos with the God Sword. Not only did he defeat Ares, and I know some people, want to talk about mixed matter of, this man Kratos fighting Ares. But yeah, Ares did all around comparatively outbox and overpower in some way, like Splinter for the defense of Kratos. And when he got fed up with Kratos being annoying, he put together some voodoo representation of making a black hole pocket dimension and sending Kratos there. But Kratos was able to push past this through his not just mental will, and this will work on a lot of people below. I don't think it will work on some gods though, not only from these gods either having better mental will, not having anything that I think Ares could explode through, his pocket dimension to be the most wild case of basically dilemma and distress factor on him. Like, you never exploit any of the weaknesses in their mental focus, because I don't even know how this pocket dimension works, but I'm taking he sends them to a metaphorical plane of the existence, to basically give them hell mentally, spiritually, and physically beyond compare. And I only laugh because it's a very trippy thing that it's obviously not accurate to the original myths, but it's just crazy because Ares basically is an executioner of the underworld. He's pulling out multi-robust crack shit of the most ridiculous degree. He got spider arms, he got fire, the most ballistic form, he got all different type of mix-up maneuvers and crazy shit. A sword as long as a fucking ocean, my nigga. He's just crazy, my nigga. He's just crazy, booming wild. Again, I don't think he could exploit or really put pressure on people from that, and either best that, or it would just be a common credit of battle for removal mixed bag. But Kratos was able to push past it, use the God Sword, use his great power of hope to full course on, to full on slay Ares in a long fight. God damn, I hate that fucking boss fight sometimes. And yeah, he perfected against him, so it's simple. God of War Kratos though should not only be higher regard of that with actual God, ascension, title, stand, and power, but with all his capabilities and prevalence of being a more harsher, cruel, and demon version of Ares, being a whole new pro effort of basically laying down a smackdown on any motherfucking opposition to possibly be in the way of Sparta. But this man having the duality of not only being way more experienced and echelon of all them type of shit, but the fact that it's God title of great renown, fear, and holster of great power, that I feel like he should strong sensibly best those odds. And the fact that a lot of his God essence was making the Blade of Olympus way more herald of power, I feel like kind of concludes reasonable gauge of the fact that not only him at his full power as a god is ridiculously beyond compare to most of the other record of people, and makes him a whole different rack of all trades, a possible standing of power gauge that to me would have him effortlessly dominate and flatline a lot of people before him, right? So, yeah. 3 p.m. All right, continue. We have Koto with a Sisters of Fate. From her makes Seattle to a greater version of Kratos. Fate manipulation if you want to stretch, because again, fate manipulation really come with the Sisters of Fate all at once, but reasonably should have a higher hail. The fates are seen in greater standing than most of the mixed gods, and the fact that they know about Kratos' fate, they know about different ways to defeat him. In the situation at hand, I can see Clotho especially being a lot more room open, and this woman not being basically in a fucking 3-wheeler confinement like shoddy pride would be able to defeat him. You could argue though if that could actually happen or not. I see it being able to happen all around in the grand scope, because I think the Series of Fates can pull a lot of different crazy shit if you give them their open disposal, and could just all around defeat them. right? That goes for Atropus and Lacahasis, if I'm saying her name right, because she's said to be the strongest and shows the best formidableness out of all of them. And Lacahasis would reasonably defeat, you know, him in the grandstand in the case of matter for, power stand capabilities and things of that, and could, play puppet master with his fate different shit, arguably just off of like preset mindset. Again, not using fate to their greatest manipulation, but other shit of that regard. But yeah, next we got Balder cursed. Not only can he not die, I don't really see any way that they could, because again, like, we want to like try not to cross pantheons and like versus mixed talk. Their fate manipulation most likely cannot work to the greatest regard on niggas that are not bound to the fate of the Greek pantheon. Their fate manipulation, from what I know, if we go by mixed argument, Greek myth comparison is restricted to the fate of the gods, the mortals, and beings that are aligned within the world. Unless you stretch that beyond the cuffs of Greece / the Greek pantheon, that kind of would overarch on a little bit of like just precognition by all testing of like, lore and or possible credit of weaknesses on characters, and that only to me sounds a little bit too busted. That I would agree would be a great possibility if they actually could untap fate, to the greatest regard. Because here's the thing, like individually the Sisters of Fate have great mixed knowledge about fate. I would take it as being gods, beings that overlook fate. They're the advisors of fate. They are literally the people that personify the core construction of how to build, dismantle, and reform fate to their own means. They are able to unwind, detach, and reform, like I said, fate to their means. But I feel like when we talk about people of different planes, skill, and the capabilities of Balder at hand, it goes way beyond. When we talk about the Sisters of Fate over here, they get to a whole different, hatch, a power stand that to me gives them a whole different prevalence of capability that is way beyond a compare of, all the fates combined, But even then, still, you got the case of, someone like cases who is very skilled, got a great arsenal, got a great array of capabilities, definitely be very out of, the mindset for what Balder has faced. The magic definitely arguably superior. But the fact that Balder can legitimately not die, and you can't tell me there's anything that these people could do. And before someone said, like, listen, this is our son, we're being in character. And tie with the fact that I think that Freya would be a lot more kind of stunned to see Balder. Granted, you could say about other characters, and we're trying to be mixed open. But I think even if you want to argue her getting the mistletoe or not, Balder is so astronomically stronger than the case of his mother, at least at this point, then I feel like that would be entirely irrelevant. Balder not only is a efficient combatant, best tracker, closer, person for this man, Odin. And some people might perceive that as making him better than Heimdall. I don't really agree. I can get more into that. But simply put, to set in stone slate, I think in every case of the way, right, that Balder is so much of a whole different, cracked regard of nigga moving around like A Train, punching like a truck, and this dishing nothing but this 5-finger looking good 5 pieces like no other, could just brush through a lot of people and none of them can kill him, unless you want to talk about battle for removal and Ares, I don't know, containing him and his mental dilemma. I even think there's an argument that yes, Balder could not get past a great affliction of emotional pain, emotional damage, that Balder could body him before that even happens. And I also think that Ares would be more possibly fucking appalled at the idea that he can't even actually gauge the way to kill him. Like every possible line I could think that Ares would be regurgitating is being like, How? I hit him with my fucking ultimate and he's still alive. Actually, like, there's no way I really see Balder really getting destroyed in the grand scope by anyone, mainly because of that. And then obviously, the elf in the room, Balder with no curse. I think everyone now has an easier chance at killing him. But Balder not only showed great relativation, banging out and overarchingly beating Kratos. Because first of all, Kratos by himself is not killing Baldur unless we give him the case of God of War 4 at the end and credit this being so dominantly, out of his league. But this is the fact of the matter is that he could never beat him by himself. Baldur sometimes speed blitz, beats the dog shit out of Kratos. He gives him the wet work. He bests a lot of different other creative people. And Baldur, even though obviously the statement's about because he thought he was mortal, Baldur is, in his own words, God of Ragnarok and God of War 4, a ridiculously threatening and dangerous foe. A unorthodox, crazed matter of nigga. This fucking compound V drug addict moves so different than any of these motherfuckers that he would be astronomically built different than them, especially with no curse, where he's utilizing more ice, he's using lava, fire, booming different, and has no reason to hold back. And he's actually taking the fight seriously. He's feeling pain, he's feeling a great deal of, damage and other shit. And he would probably, in the end, if the whole objective is to win and not fuck around, glorifyly piece niggas up. He's a lot more, caged when he's cursed because he can't open up the greater form of, light burst in his chest. But when that light is ready to blow off like a fuse, he be unrelenting. So, yeah, regardless of how you see it, to me, I just feel like that gets him the reasonable win to where he just beats everybody. Now, Kratos of God of Ragnarok intro, not only from the experience, accolades, and capabilities, and the things that he's faced, like Thorn, how he stood against, Thor, and obviously, banging out with Freya, he's obviously under, prepared, only having a Leviathan axe and not really having much more. I think he's so much more of a veterinar of his stuff with no repetition. He's so much more, high key of a different unravel of capabilities and scope that he should all around, to me, decisively best Baldur and or full-fledged kill him if needed. The only argument I could see is the credit of the fact that, Baldur being cursed, being a better version, which I don't think. Yes, he has a better advantage over them, but Baldur with no curse is a lot more open. Baldur would get, I think, is physically bodied a little bit sometimes by some of these people, but Baldur, who actually can feel pain and is more open to actually rolling stone, fighting, he's actually willing to get up in there and get on his unhinged Mike Tyson style and bang out, right? He will actually let loose. So I think, Scandinavian Joe Frazier, regardless of all his capabilities, could now overarchingly hold the same candle to Kratos at this time. I think the only reason you could give argument for is that if we use gameplay, because he only has Leviathan Axe, he couldn't all-around best him. So, I guess if you wanted, you could say he's like here, but I think he's fine to be here, and he also doesn't need a Leviathan Axe to beat his ass. So, no, I don't really see that, you know what I'm saying? But again, that's just me. We can push on, right? In this case, being all the Valkyries. Now, there's a lot of things to be greater talked about with this. So, the greatest, way I could probably, precisely and finally say this, right, is that in this case, Hilder and Carter have great statements. They put them on great league above all. And this keeps adding up, right? We talk about Orum, Rota, Gudrunful, Gondul, Gunnar, and kind of keeps going. You see, there's an argument that Kratos could beat the Valkyries by themselves, but the fact is that there's a mixed argument that the Valkyries' statement showing them, regardless in spirit or physical, are a whole different ridiculous regard of people. Kratos in both games put the Valkyries in high esteem of being one of the most challenging threats on their journey. They are ridiculous. He says that Sigurd is the strongest of the Valkyries that he's faced, and obviously he still puts her in high regard, definitely being the second strongest Valkyrie that he has faced at a point, arguably at that point. That's even considering Gná, right? Don't get it. I don't think Sigurd is stronger than Gná, but I think that is easily the second strongest Valkyrie that he's faced, and that's mixed, arguably including Gná. I think Gná has things that contradict that statement, but he probably means that from the perspective out of all the Valkyries, because that's where that statement comes from, right? So he doesn't exactly say it's second, but it's definitely like next to another, in this case being like Freya or someone else, the strongest, right? And all the Valkyries, I think, reasonably one-on-one should best. They have a lot of the most creative hacks. This is, again, an underplayed, Kratos. So I think all around they were just best. You can interchange any of them, but I think this, by all their accolades, scaling, accounts, all the capabilities they can show within their fights. And you could argue that they weren't the best mental understanding, as they were more like rabid, frenzious, just wow, popping off, crash out. Case of matter of, Valkyries, that move with only intent to dead sight kill. And yes, Kratos did best them. All the Valkyries reasonably are bloodlusted and moving all type of spastic when fighting him, maybe, but it doesn't put down the fact that they are creative, beasts in female skin, no sexist shit against them. So yeah, like, I don't have much more to say than that. So yeah. Next, you have Hist and Miss. Now, it's because of the fact of the statement of Kratos and the fact that Hist and Miss have a lot more creative hacks and displays and capabilities, both individually against them. They fought a stronger version of Kratos, greater version of Atreus, and do some different greater case of shit. I think that Hist and Miss are pretty crazy and powerful. They're seen as like being second people to Gná. They were entrusted and they're put in good, hail and respect by Odin. And they are definitely resourceful, and Kratos gives them their own flowers. So I think that is reasonable to put them higher. I could maybe see if you wanted to argue, like these are the OGs, they should be more stronger, or they could be beyond maybe. But I just think that like he's got a better showcasing of crazy shit to plant them a little bit more higher. Them together would be a possible undefeated pair against a lot of niggas, and could do a lot of shit that could put down a lot of these other people, right? Sirgun, right, again, have a statement of being a ferocious, unparalleled, undefeated claim of top-tier woman, bad bitch activity. Mimir, how did you drop the ball? I'm going to stop. But Sirgun, just from all the hell, the PTSD she gives everybody in the fucking boss fight, and it's the fact that, like, obviously I'm joking, right? I'm trying to be entertaining here, but actually speaking at some real shit, like, Shawty's just ridiculous, and, is said to be ridiculously skilled. I talked about her comparison with Freya in my shameless plug, Why Freya vs. Melania is Not Close video. Check that out, it's a cool one. But, yeah, with all that being said, like, Shawty's built different. Like, she's a whole different tick for tack, glorified, built different Shawty that outdoes, outshines different record piece of, of not just scaling and other different foundation, but it's said to easily be like second or third strongest, and showcases that in comparison. And she has great durability feats. She's a very creative fighter, and she has everything that these people have. And even though Hist and Miss one-on-one would be a problem maybe for a time, and definitely together you could argue could outdo her. I think her skill, experience, record of being a built different sense of sufficient warrior, and has great accolades and qualm of being one of the most full-fledged, like, fly off the handles, rack of all trades. Valid card is like insurmisibly built different, in the words of Maul's World, right? Like, that nigga Odin, he lied a lot, but he was never lying when putting Zurgun in the place of Freya. Shawty built different. So to me, that makes her way more of a great accolade than all of them in comparison. Kratos and Loki, they're an undefeated duo, able to best all different type of odds. I think Freya and Venetis, aka more or less Freya, coming in fully into her Valkyrie stage, right, of a ridiculously built different, type of Shawty, would reasonably give credit for her not only being able to push past all the rest of these people and her skill, regards of, crack form, magic and accessories and skill, and, the greater shit that she gains, possibly even within this look. I think that would give the reassurance that she reasonably should be able to push past Kratos and Loki. I could see an argument that they could all around best her, but I think with how she moves and fights and goes about shit, that she, especially with this version possibly being on one to maybe deliver a killing blow to Kratos, would go about cutting down Kratos and Atreus before anything. And yeah, I mean, I could see that being the case. Again, you could argue more, But that's how I feel. Do you have intro Kratos to Valhalla? This is taking all the experience, all the scaling, and just being pretty much, like God of War 4 Kratos or Ragnarok, where he doesn't have all these different possible weapons, accessory, armor, hacks, all this other shit, but reasonably has obviously the weaponry, has the reasonable hacks that should get him the win. And I think after everything that has happened, that Kratos reasonably should be there. Obviously, there's an argument like, how can Kratos be all the way down here? But if you obviously look up, I got him at the end there. But considering everything he's done and the fact that Valhalla in its own right, I don't know the exact words of the statement, but correct me if I'm wrong, puts you at your base general self. So Kratos at base is not that strong, right? But to be fair, Kratos at base has done a lot. So there's an argument that he is still pretty strong. I could see an argument that you could just put him down or do whatever, but I think Kratos, not only from besting a lot of Iron Arm, doing a lot of shit, Valhalla gives you the greatest challenges, and he does face different versions of Tyr that all around, you could say that he could be a something. Granted, I do think Tyr is obviously a lot more stronger, especially considering a scenario where it's not a spar, no holding back. I'm not saying Tyr wasn't like going all out, but saying like him doing more demon time shit and just, more accessible fighting. I would just like say that that's reasonably, where I feel like you should be. This is Kratos considering, manipulation of shit from the fates being here, but, just being by his own lonesome. Granted, that shit can only work so much, because correct me if I'm wrong, he can't use time whenever. It's restricted to the time of the Greek pantheon, right? But even with that, after everything he's done, his scaling to Zeus and how he's done shit and how he's been able to rock and bop and sock and do everything he's done, I think he reasonably should be yards greater than a lot of people. And obviously, some people might be saying, okay, well, how is he down here in comparison if he's fighting God of War 2 Zeus? The thing is that throughout that fight, Zeus was not only overarchingly dominating, he was all around trading better hands, and everything that Kratos did not do as much greater form of like really actual pull of weight like what Zeus did. Zeus was not only battering in order to just rocking and flinging hands against Kratos, but Kratos had to basically pull a weasel rat tactic to be able to best him, showing that not only Kratos, even with all his capabilities, even with all his experience, his entire adventure, his entire road to get to Zeus, the man that wronged him more than anyone else, even Ares, I would argue, because his own fucking father. Ares, that nigga a distinct brother. Like, that don't even have anything to do with him. That nigga is a distant relative in comparison. Ares fucked him over, but Zeus, he wronged that nigga. He looked into his own son's eyes and said, you ain't shit, nigga, and then killed everybody he ever cared about and then destroyed his home. No, it's not even an argument. Zeus, he fucked him over worse. I'll argue that till death, but it doesn't matter. The point is that this nigga Kratos, even with all these capabilities, Zeus is still yards beyond him in some occasions. And even trading between the Blade of Olympus, Zeus took the blows from the Blade of Olympus, was able to give it back 1,000 times more. So yeah, like he took his own concentrated power and took that shit and was like, I eat those, nigga. So yeah, no. Because from God of War 4, considering all the, hacks, capabilities, accolades, and former shit, I feel like reasonably should be here. You could argue between him and God of War 2 being a little bit more, but I feel like Kratos with all his capabilities, Leviathan axe, crazy hacks, the Blades of Chaos, serving, hacks, feats, chimes, his runic abilities and greater shit, just what he's faced, I think, with all around the grand scope, and best. He's God of War 2 in self. But it is a fate, not only from the fate manipulation being whoppy-doo ridiculous, but being a lot of greater height and stand of capabilities than a lot of others. And 3 of them at the same time. A lot of incredible capabilities just off of that. And it's the fact that I feel like a lot of people, even when them having their own capabilities, the best and pushed past, could now run best. Now you might argue, how was this man Kratos going to be that, not too much lower, but that lower than him, without this stuff in comparison, again, using the fate manipulation or time manipulation more or less in comparison, the fact that I think just looking in character, because he never used it after the fact against Zeus and usually didn't do it, it wouldn't matter. But again, when we talk about the case of, comparison with character to character and looking at it from the possibility of that fight and the goal is to win. You can make a lot of occasions, but to me, I think consistently looking at character, most persistent moves and prevalence to the fact that a lot of it wouldn't matter if we go about the actual array of capabilities Kratos can pull from it, because what can he really pull against God of War 4 and Kratos if he actually would tamper with time that isn't stretching the bar for what's supposed to be happening? Plus, if anything, timeline shit in God of War by God of War 2 by itself is contradicted. That's a bigger thing. I don't want to go on a tangent. It's already getting long. It's 4:34 for me. Let it go and get this done in almost a 2 hour mark, because last time was almost 3 hours and it's a lot more shorter tier list. I feel like we've been getting through it in a very consecutive way. I appreciate you for watching this long if you have, but regardless, simply put, that's a proud reason for why this is a Fate can use. Fate preset shit, precognition, a lot of unique ways to actually push past Kratos. I could see maybe Kratos besting, but three of them at the same time and all using different mixtures of Fate, size, and this comparison, I think it would be a little bit too much, but, I could see an argument. But next is Primordial Powerhouses. So, starting from the bottom, right, we got Niflheim, right? Niflheim, not only from her having, no ties to Greek myth, Niflheim, I feel like, is a very mixed, weird person to try to really tug at fate-wise. But Niflheim having crazy hacks, reality warping, crazy, dummy, wild, anti-counters, all type of shit, you know what I'm saying, that go against all different type of aspects for what most people below can even do. The size, the killer instinct, the craze, whirlwind of different shit she can pull. She can absorb a great form of shit. Has a lot of different aspects of the most abstract, wild shenanigans to be pulled. And individually, I think she could have defeated this version of Kratos or a greater form Ragnarok Kratos. I feel like just individually, Niflheim is beyond a lot of people's comprehension, and she can do a lot of shit that outgoes a lot of different form of, the aspect of just comparative fighting, and is a fight with a being that can pull at all different strings of the multiverse or cosmic aspects and could just put so much high potent pressure, it would just be a fucking Looney Tunes fight at that point. And I just feel like she has been, multiple times over in the most craziest regards of shit. And if it wasn't for Freya or any other mixed uses of the environment and situation, tied with the fact of obviously Niflheim unfortunately playing into her own portal's way of being closed, then she wouldn't have, lost. And, don't get it twisted. I still think Kratos, Freya, great scale to Niflheim. They were put damage on Niflheim, able to do shit to Niflheim. But Niflheim was not only able to put damage on Kratos, able to overpower Freya, able to put in great work. She's a terrifying beast, is a high revered and hailed person, and Odin, put her in decent, great regard in the sense that she was a great, tool to be used to not only put down anybody that dared to fuck with the, strings of, the great Yggdrasil, but also be a person to remove oppositions off the senses, because there's a mechanic that if he would do this with Niflheim, he would probably come in different plans together to possibly use this against people. So she just stylistically, all form a matter of fighting is beyond most niggas' perception, and it's a whole different prevalence of pool of all different type of capabilities to be just suckled at in the mix of fight. Like, shawty could drown niggas in pressure. She can infinitely just drop shit, override niggas. She's just a colossally built different form. Shawty is the definition of being a mix of the Scorpion and God of War, Godzilla array of cases, the most crafty maneuvers, and then she got the reality warping techniques of that one nigga from Ben 10 that was going about trying to absorb Baby Alien X. That's so fucking funny to me how ridiculous that Niflheim really is, because she just kind of one off, right? And I love her design, by the way. I love a lot of shit with her, but I don't want to go on a whole Glaze rant. But again, she has those essence of that. Again, like that dude that got absorbed by Kevin 11 that was trying to go about absorbing Baby Alien X, and try to just get boomed to be wild form of hacks left and right. He's like Cyborg if he was a full fucking demon with his shit. Because Cyborg cracked too. But I'm just saying that's a little bit of my just again headspace on that. Garm though is a very tricky wild form of matter person, where not only is Garm a undead hound of hell, will be on demon time, going full drooling for the kill, decimation of most enemies, but most people can't kill him. There's not really any fate to really conjure in greater form to Garm. I don't see this as a fate trying to put a soul in Garm, and depending on what soul they put into Garm, might make it worse. And most people cannot defeat him. And if it wasn't for what Atreus did, yeah, Garm was not going to be defeated. There's literally no way you can defeat Garm. And yet there are people that main way of doing shit is on physical killing, but they're either so much more stronger than Garm, but I don't see a way Garm could possibly either defeat them. Garm has his own capabilities of battlefield removal in the sense of like removing himself to get an advantage. He has a lot of crazy capabilities. He has a lot of wacky, wild form maneuvers. If the fight is in Helheim, to give him mixed situational advantage, even though we can put him in equal settings. And I like to say that goes for everybody here, even some of the context would be needed because that's the only place they could be. Like, for instance, like the hippocamps have to be around water to exist, for instance. Like, what the fuck? I mean, not entirely by concept, but like that's where they're deriving their whole energy source of existence from. So Garm being most prevalent with him having a lot of wacky capabilities that hail from Helheim as being a hound of Helheim, I like to say that Garm would just come back to back to back alive, you know what I'm saying, and pretty much be the tarnished equivalent of like, you guys can kill me as many times as you want, but all I gotta do is kill you guys once, and they can never put him down. And anyone that is higher could eventually put them down from the argument of like, okay, what happens if you do this to their body and greater killingness? They have a lot of ways to defeat them: battlefield removal, immobilization, or they could figure out a way to do what they do. But Garm could be as fucking OP as he wants lifestyle wise, but he can't beat them. So yeah, it doesn't matter, to be honest. But yeah, going onwards, we got Yorm, older, not only from the credit of stalemating Thor, having a lot of revered statements, being a powerful pillar of strength, fear, and great trembling force. The world serpent in comparison to mythology, which is a mixed matter of held and kind of adapted and shit, is a ridiculous, tremendous foe. And, unironically, like in Norse myth, it makes sense for Jormungandr to be over Fenrir, not just going off a Norse myth comparison, but I believe that Garm could never figure out a way to kill Yorm. Yorm's also way too fucking big and, like, would override him. And I could see Yorm literally eating Garm alive. Like, I could actually see him trying to just eat him, just chomping him, just fucking pulling a cell of heads and just creaming his ass in his mouth, pause, like just devouring this nigga whole. Like, pause again. Like, you obviously, we know the concept of I'm saying this, but I just feel like he would just all around just gobble him up, possibly pull a, what is the fucking name? I forgot the fucking extinct snake. Fucking Titanoboa, fucking Anaconda wrapping around Garm, choking him, crickling his neck, alligator spinning around him, whirlwinding, rocking his ass into oblivion. Obviously, Jormungandr was getting back shots from Baldur and got knocked out, but because Kratos and Atreus was inside him, tied as well with the fact that he didn't know where Baldur was hitting him from, which gives to me possibly conclusion that he was giving him back shots, pause, that he would all around build a perfect against the odds and put down the case of Garm and anyone else in comparison, because a lot of the shit they could pull either can't work because you're too fucking big, fate don't work, ridiculous amount of greater stand, and obviously he scales somewhat to Thor, even if Thor is overarchingly way stronger than him. Kronos here is not only very powerful by mix of Creve, this man Kratos created the fact that Kronos is ridiculous matter of unsurmountable beast and weight, has great fame for being a titan of the most ridiculous regard, and obviously defeated, Uranus. If we go by the fact that he has a lot of crazy force of nature capabilities and magic mixed hell for him actually to do some crazy shit with possibly mixed manipulation of time that is not just restricted to the Greek pantheon, but even not. I think there's a lot of arguments to say that Kronos is ridiculously a tremendous force that would all around push past him. Atlas is physically stronger than Kronos. He has better display of shit in the actual, Great War. That to me concludes that he should be stronger. So simple as that. Hades could take the soul of Atlas. He was beating Kronos. I think Hades would all around defeat Atlas. And I feel like, the argument that Atlas was able to stop him and is because Poseidon zapped him doesn't entirely mean that Atlas couldn't beat him. Granted, I think Atlas would outmuscle Hades when it comes down to the soul hacks thing, so because it's based on a physical power. But I believe that Hades is so much more powerful and ridiculous from them that you could suffice to say put him in the stance of reasonably being able to best him. Young Poseidon, though, should be the same. He did more in the Great War. Poseidon is said to be stronger than Hades. He has more credit cues, cool, wild proportion of capabilities than, what Hades could possibly do. I know it might sound a little bit weird because of the fact that I'm talking very fast, and as well, I need to go and get some of my throat pause because they haven't talk very much. That young Poseidon has way more greater run capabilities, way more cool, more very versatile and unique greater form of capabilities. As Poseidon not only can utilize electricity to stun him, he can maneuver around him in greater full, clean inflation. He can utilize water in greater form. Again, he's stunned a great, more powerful person that I think is physically stronger than Hades. So I think Poseidon, with a greater, utilization of electricity, could just, entirely not smite, but kind of like static shock my man Hades. And like I said before, no repetition, has way more cool capabilities, more pull than versatility of greater creative matter, and I just feel like he would best them. The hippocamps by themselves should be stronger in greater form than him because of them being able to push against multiple titans, be a more powerful crazed matter of usage, unless you want to say that because Poseidon is the god of the seas, he should be able to, control any waterful being or any being of that sort, and we kind of exclude his time of, command of the hippocamps. The hippocamps should be all around in greater form, stronger than, in case of young Poseidon. Hades, the God of War 3, is here not only from greater experience and accolades, growing stronger, has been able to stand other people, the fact that he can have a tongue of war with Kratos, his accolades, defeating multiple titans of the Great War and others, feared in multiple regards. He has been seen in different mix, greater hell than others. And Hades has a lot of statements about being just a crazy, colossal figure, this reaping souls, demon scourge of the underworld, shit like that. Poseidon, the same claim of being, stronger than him, ridiculously powerful, and built different in all different regards. And Hades, in comparison, a lot of shit that he could try to pull wouldn't really work on his brother, and he could pull the same things that he would do to him when he was younger, but in just more versatile, unique form. Ymir's here, for not only being entirely conceptually all the 9 realms, right? He embodies that, but just as a being so astronomically abstract, so unconventionally, conceptually out of the league of these niggas, that his pure existence should just, be able to collect these niggas, bro. Like, I don't even see how anybody, unless you're actually a person that scales or as a herald to being to him, or you have the mixed argument of being a person that can perceive things of that same merit, being able to actually fight Ymir. Like, Ymir should just be beyond almost everybody's comprehension. Like, this is like literally the father of the 9 realms. Like, fuck no, bro. V and Vili, they helped in the killing of him, and scale to Odin to some extent. Odin is a lot more greater because of all the accolades of what he does when he's young, but should be to similar scale. They're grand, a great form of, like, to me, decent assertion of being like to that, like, destruction of Viltrumite feat of being like all somewhat of the same amount of presence of putting in work on a being that represents an entire pantheon to a, like, complex multiverse. But Odin was the main man to actually put in the killing blow and push to actually pour the entire 9 realms into what it was, right? Because all of them paved the entire, like, construction of it, but he's the guy that from the Ymir's blood and time of the shit culminating to the full foundation of shit. So Odin is the main striking criteria for that actual, scaling chain and or amount of power. But they're great nephew in the sense of Thor, pre-Mjolnir, having Mjolnir, younger Thor, whatever you want to call him, should be the higher merit of that. Enforcer, slayed a bunch of giants, ridiculously powerful, has both different acclaim and capabilities, and was seen in great high merit. So, yeah, simple as that. Odin, Vale, and V should be way too much for him. Should be beyond his comprehension. God of War 3 starting Kratos or post God of War 2 with the Blade of Olympus Kratos should reasonably, by the record of just his pure being so astronomically beyond the capability of these niggas, with not just using the Blade of Olympus, all his scaling, all his feats, all his capabilities, should give him reasonable record hold of being able to be beyond all aspect of the comprehension of these people in regards to how big, small, or wild they are. I believe that there's a lot of reasonable credence to conclude that there's a solid way to say that Kratos would be able to best him. Post sticks, meaning that he would gain all his shit, probably not to the same ridiculous form, but he would just be upper form. Now, the reason why I say Thor first fight should be able to obviously, best the case of, this shit is not only from the fact that I believe that from him holding back a greater deal of what he's been able to do, scaling hell of Thor, being stated to be one of, if not the most physically strong and imposing dude that Kratos has fought in a very long time. The fact that his strength compounds with Mjolnir, all different claim, he should be able to push past. Now, the Blade of Olympus should greater wreck his ass. And I can't agree that if you believe that, the Blade of Olympus should all around push past that, maybe, but I believe that Thor has shown great, not just durability, adaptation, great, bulldog level, ready to go about hauling ass and busting, showcasing not just pound for pound being a beast, but also being a whole different record holder of basically like mammoth sturdiness and strength. Like, he's a very durable dude. He has a great pull capabilities. I think even Bloodluster, he's a great record of this. And he has a lot of, dog in him. And he is the GOAT. And I'm not going to try to be biased. As y'all know, Thor from God of War is my favorite version of Thor of all time, of all fiction, right? I fuck with his character so much. He's such a Salente money character. And if Ryan Hurst, even though can, possibly be arguable for being the guy that a lot of people thought would be Conquest in comparison, don't get twisted. I fuck with Negan as Conquest, and I love his performance as him. He defines Conquest to a great deal. I'm so lonely. Face up. If Ryan Hurst can rep Thrag, I'll die a happy man. Anyway, just side though, on the road, man. Like Thor, all his record holder and shit, and just being a whole different matter of unit big dog, I feel like could find a way to not only brush past and push past Kratos with the post sticks, but it's more the fact that Kratos with the soul amp, aka Kratos kind of mid throughout God of War 3 and not this version, is mainly the ascension of like greater form of like strength, paw for paw, bang for bang caliber that would reasonably give the argument for being over a lot. And I think that's a greater stance for this man Thor. Granted, I'm not saying I don't see the capability for him to be best, but if you think Thor scales reasonably regard to Hercules and scales over all these other people and gives reasonable acclaim and capability to be over a lot of others, I think there's a lot of sensible argument not just to say that Thor is reasonably on that level, but you can't give argument to say that Thor, even in his first fight, in his first fight's only showcasings, which are just upper handing, it's already known to possibly shit that, Kratos is going to scale to. I think without due, it's because even though it doesn't change the fact that young Kratos, I do think all around is stronger than Norse Kratos, that there's a lot of arguments to put into perspective that Thor reasonably is yards infinitely out of the league of my nigga Kratos as some aspects of his younger self. So that's just how I feel. Next we have Hercules with the Cestus, the famed champion of Rome, man who defied all 12 labors, man that have a design, a great likeness to, at greater form, right? But at the same time, I feel like it could have been better in actual, accuracy and rapping of his more cooler, different artistic and literary interpretation of not just his Greek and Roman stuff, because in truth it should be Heracles with being more fan, reckon of more of the Heracles aspect, and also accounting for the fact that there's more set in the means of being a person that has a lot of the hell and reveredness of obviously shit that is more iconically stained by Roman interpretation, but is obviously account for a kind of, a Greek version, which would be Heracles, even though Heracles and Hercules are basically the same, and truly Hercules is a more popular name and better name, to be honest, because Heracles just sounds a little bit, generic, especially with the context of it being because Hera acted like a mother to him, right? But we're not going to talk about that. Simply put, Hercules with the cestus is a beast with ridiculous regard, right? With the cestus, he is a whole monumentally beaming, whole train wreckage of power, with the fact that he can pull a different assortment of different creative cases, shit that, that is beyond most people's comprehension in strength. With the Nemean Cestus, he is arguably more physically stronger than a lot of people on the list. He is ridiculously built different when it comes to boulder hands. And like I said before, with no repetition, no tongue start, full strong articulate, right? My nigga is so uncharacteristically, so booming wild, brutacious, and effortlessly able to wreck house and run through shit. He's able to react to a great deal of shit. He's able to catch up and bang out with this man Kratos to ridiculous regards. He's able to do a lot of ridiculous matter of shit. His shockwaves seem like they shake off Olympus, and I'm making that, hyperbolic shit, But there is a level of, again, him talking in the matter of being, this infamous, effortlessly, this dog walking matter of dude. He's performed all 12 labors, having him in great strength, accolade, and mixed skill. And again, he was rocking paw for paw with a great, regard Kratos. And I think he would reasonably best first fight Thor by his own showcase, and the fact that Thor would not be full on one ready for the blows of Hercules, and using that showcasing and capabilities of that will probably all around best and dog overall against Thor and best him in all around combat. But I can see an argument to say that Thor in his first fight with Mjolnir, as Mjolnir, for his name says, is very instant collide to be some most craziest shit. Even when we want to go about saying that one has better amount of damage and or full of like range and grand scope, banging out with shit, right? Where Mjolnir is able to shake an entire, deep, intricate multiverse, clack somebody on the head so hard it gets sent back in time before their own birth, distort time, do a bunch of whoppy do crazy shit. I mean, Mjolnir is a thing of a most wicked renown. That again, like I said, joke side about possibly shaking off Olympus. It's sort of the most booming wild peak of shit, and the shit that goes about what he does is creating so much of a colossal force that he's able to pretty much juggernaut slug with Kratos and hang with him in ridiculous regard. Hercules, not just from that, but the fact that he obviously, from banging out with that version of Kratos, is of high record. And easily, I feel like can beat those versions of Kratos, even with the Blade of Olympus to be considered, because Hercules is able to match the speed capabilities of the Blade of Olympus in game, and a lot of shit that Kratos does just doesn't work if we go by gameplay logic. So there's a mixed perspective on that. But then we have Heimdall, who some people, as I talked about in my last, is kind of a headache. Try to best define, as he's a very shaky character, and like last time I almost put him in two powerful sides weak to scale because I'm very mixed on him, because I have a lot of mixed interpretation to be said about Heimdall. I've had a big in-depth debate involving Heimdall, as I talked about a little bit in my video talking about why I think that guy named Kratos is lame. I've had different discussions about Heimdall, and I've made very apparent my kind of awe and respect and sense of intrigue about Heimdall's powers. I think he's a very creative version. I think he's one of the most unique versions of Heimdall, right? But I think in a way his powers kind of is very flimsy, because a lot of arguments that a lot of it is not very consistent to best define. You see, first of all, let's talk about, Kratos saying that he's killed gods greater than Heimdall, as it's kind of contradicted by what's actually said about him after, about him being one of, not the most dangerous asset to Odin, which could get him over Thor, if you want to argue, because I'm going to talk about that fight, and I have a lot to be said, because this video is definitely going to push somewhat greater 2-hour marks. Again, I have a lot to say about what we're about to get into. We're almost done now, obviously, right? Heimdall with his precognition, his presight, his foresight, allows him to be able to read the minds and see the hypothetical greater form future of any event and pretty much, be Weave Nation certified. He's able to persistently, the ultra instinct, high key, endless flow type nigga. He's moving like Tiandi. He's able to see the crossroads, the capability, and the preemptive, already set in stone closing of the gap in movement before any nigga could possibly even fucking unravel it. And Heimdall is just endlessly out of a lot of people's comprehension because he has never been hit before. He's never even bled. He's never even felt any matter of, possible damage or real harm or pressure because, again, no one has ever laid a finger on him. He don't even remember the last time that shit happened, if it ever did happen. And he just simply is able to out-duke and bob and weave. And, again, it's pretty much just Weave Nation certified. But a lot of that perspective is tied now, again, to, his precognition, but as well as hacks. He is a master of Bifrost. He wields it in very cool concession. He's able to utilize his sword and shaft and instinct mixture. He has Galahorn that causes great stun. It is a powerful weapon. He's able to literally change, the way of a fight in a very creative way where he's able to slow down time. He's able to affect your mind in so many unique creative ways with not only being able to use precognition to move around you, open you up, play around you, treat you like a child, but utilize precognition in multiple resourceful, very advantageous, and very crack form ways to the point where he could clack and multi times, decimate a motherfucker effortlessly and proficiently like no other. And pretty much in a lot of the ways that he moves and fighting, be kind of the most crazily moving wild dude like no other. Because again, Weave Nation certified. And the capability to literally slow down time to cause a disconnect in the movement of a person by doing something that some people could never even possibly fathom to react to in actual time and slow you down or fling about random usage of time warping is crazy to think about. But even in all that, the reason why I think, not just from the fact that Kratos put him in high record, you have someone like Odin that puts him in high standing of power. I think that Heimdall could easily outmaneuver, desecrate, open people up and put people down through his Bifrost, because Bifrost, I don't exactly know to mix regard the exact most appropriate way to explain it, but I'll explain it in these multi-different cases, mix possibly concessions to the fact that Bifrost opens somebody up, it puts pressure on them, it pretty much is like a poisonous, kind of like incendiary dissection of a person. It allows them to be lowered on their defense and capabilities, so like a provocation or pretty much, again, a way to bypass durability or durability negation, like an HF blade, is a some mixed credit of how it's like, and it's able to endlessly kind of like assault at the body while as well getting pressurized, and he uses Bifrost in multiple forms, allowing him to be the most elite fighter in some occasions because he's able to mix people up endlessly in multiple arrays. But the reason why I think Thor has reasonable argument to say that he's over is for multiple reasons. And I've debated this, but I believe that Thor, like Kratos, has the capability to adapt and push past precognition. Now hold up, let me finish. His precognition, yes, was only able to be opened with Dropnir because of obviously the distortion of the shit to be tied with that. But Heimdall need to not just be mixed up to have Dropnir work on him if we go by gameplay. Yes, it was said that Dropnir was arguably the only way Kratos could defeat him. It was the only way for him to kill Heimdall. It was a weapon to the most proficient regards to actually best Heimdall. But the thing is that was the only way that he could beat him at the time, right? And capability to actually really put, actual full-fledged fighting prowess into play to actually mix him up. as he didn't utilize drop near in full form to actually hit him or best him entirely. That was just his most easy, accessible way to beat him. I don't think because of that, especially the arguments I know people will use for Odin beating Heimdall and other niggas as well, should be the only in-depth way to defeat him. And I know that there's greater arguments for Odin with his magic, him understanding Bifrost the same, him having mixed back some different uses and maybe precognition himself, and aspect of the fact that he narratively is just beyond Heimdall. He's the strongest of the Aesir. He's arguably strongest of the Norse pantheon to an arguable greater extent, just individually to argue. But again, there's different arguments to be had there. So yes, drop near a spear was the main and all greater way to defeat him. But saying that it's the only way to defeat him when it's arguably contradicted by game shit, to me, is entirely wrong. The examples are that Heimdall, was able to preset, see the usage of the spear, dodge around it, maneuver around it, catch it, and whack away different spears. It blew up in his face. It distorted his mind. It, went about not just, having this man start fragging, right? It had him be disillusioned and greater sense, incapacitated. But then he was able to easily weave nation, multi-high S speed, move around this man and pretty much sonic sway out of everything he was doing. And only when, because don't get it twisted, I'm not saying that Dropnir didn't actually hold up a greater effect, but it's the fact that in each point, he still was getting hit. So yeah, and only when he got hit one more time or set up with some different mixtures of Dropnir spear set up by Kratos, did he actually be able to be hit. But it's the fact that in the moment, if we go by the, multiple times perceived and represented, ways of seeing things to be able to, actually do what he does, there's no actual argument that Dropnir has to be the end-all, be-all for how he's able to be hit or hurt. Because he, in his actual power usage and how it's seen to be used, Heimdall sees the future and hypothetical maneuver of the person's mind. He reads minds. That's what Odin says. He can read people's minds, read their thoughts, see inside their soul through his Bifrost, through his precognition. He's able to see inside you and read you like a book. Meaning he'll see the events and what's hypothetical to come. He looks at you, or he could see that through again, set thing. His foresight. Like how he was able to see Atreus trying to shoot him in the head with an arrow from cognition coming to play, precautionary, course about actions of knowing that he was going to course about shooting him with the arrow, or just raw speed and instinct, catch the arrow mid-shot coming at him. Or case of how he pulls shit against not only the spear, maneuvering around the axe, being able to just effortlessly, without even actually seeming motion moving, dodge around the blades of chaos, be able to emotionally just look at you, right? And see that he is making you angry and see around your tactics and just emotionlessly dodge and weave out of every maneuver that Atreus makes. But the fact that he was looking at Kratos and Kratos was able to get off that right hand and clack him on the face and leave that thick-ass scar, to me, is showing not just only the Dropnir spear to be, possibly opening for him, yes, but not being the end-all. So what I'm trying to say here in this entire, whole Malcolm X speech that I'm giving to really convey my greater point, because I know there will be some people that will disagree with this, even though I'm not the only person that thinks Thor and other people can beat Heimdall, but the fact is that, yes, that shows to me not only, yes, is the, Dropnir spear able to open him up to eventually more and more decay his precog, but if he is looking at you and he gets that preset mindset, he will go about actions to try to prevent it, thinking that it's sweet and then get mixed up. He could have kept dodging. He got grabbed and he didn't weave out of it. He didn't attack Kratos. He didn't use no martial arts. He just got hit. And then throughout the rest of the fight, by looking at Kratos, maneuvers of that, and just using the, exploitation maneuvers of your own shit, of mix up correspondence shit, he's able to be hit and get hacked at by blades, by Leviathanax, get blamed up, you know what I'm saying? And bleeding over here, rolling like a softball, and get multiple times mixed up with the Dropner Spear, get like an infinity pool thrown at him. There's also the record of the fact that, you know, when you try hitting him with your bare hands and different mixtures, he sometimes can see that and move around that. You also using Spartan Rage, he can effortlessly weave out of that, and that shit holds no weight to him, right? So yeah, like, there's a mixed argument that he's so cracked with precognition that you can't get him over him, Thor. But unlike Hercules and a few others, I think that Thor has not only the greater narrative height of not being just only physically stronger, has always engaged with greater durability. He could take more than what Heimdall can dish out. He's faced a stronger version of Kratos who could utilize similar shit like Heimdall. He is said to be second to Odin, strongest of the Aesir mixed bag physically, right? And has Odin for reasonable regard, hail, whole fucking foundation for being a ridiculous assortment, a power stand, way more than his little brother in Heimdall. And to me, I just feel like he would all around best him. From his versatility, his power, his amount of capabilities. It is bloodlusted Thor. And I just feel like he has a lot more shit to pull from, to really grind out and all around overmatch Heimdall and speed and capability to best him. I think Heimdall's best things are simply his precog and the Bifrost. The time, manipulation shit and other shit don't really matter, not only from Thor's skill, but the fact that Thor is ridiculous. Plus also, he was walking down Heimdall. Heimdall literally felt, to me, how I perceive it, my sense of, I guess, argument for not being, fucking narratively literate or, social, cues or mix, if you want to say, like media literate, is the fact that Heimdall seemed, from looking in Thor's eyes, very much troubled by the idea that Thor would do crazy shit to him, meaning that Heimdall does not think confidently that he can beat Thor. He would never say what he said to that nigga face, meaning that Heimdall could not beat Thor. I'm not saying Heimdall can't give Thor a good fight, especially if you think Bifrost does bypass durability. But what I'm saying is that a lot of that shouldn't work on Thor to weigh him down and beat him in the end. It's because I don't see a way Heimdall could efficiently kill Thor. And I see Thor, if he got his hands on Heimdall, ripping him in half, catching him lacking with Mjolnir, or all his array of shit that he could pull with Mjolnir shown in the final fight with him, could beat him. And I just think, using narrative argument, Thor should beat him. If you disagree with this, that's cool. I will always stand with the fact that I believe Thor, the big dog, big Black Air Force energy, him, the motherfucking GOAT nigga, will best Heimdall, and that's how I feel. And, we're going to move on to something else. I've been on this for, it seemed like 20 fucking minutes. But, yeah, it is what it is. Kratos so amped. All his hacks and capabilities should just push past that stuff. And any argument for precog or the greater insurmountable strength of Thor in his final fight, that I think, would reasonably best Hercules the same, is because of how ridiculously whoppy-do he is. He has a lot more going for him, and I think the only argument is that if Thor tried to get into a physical fight with Hercules, it might be a mixed boast of like who you think is all around greater realm was stronger. But Kratos is overpowered Hercules. This meant Thor is able to sometimes bench and give great, physical magnitude of not just overarching, overpowering, and just bullying and just straight boulder flinging and whole, ox grounding motherfuckers into the fucking, floor. This pulverizing, like not full bullying Kratos, but he definitely in some great aspects of the fight is going toe to toe, greater bang for bang, greater bows for bows, a higher bow, meanwhile, like calling of gravity of banging out that he should just be unsurmountably beyond. I feel like in greater range of not just strength, but also crack of power. Because I believe that if Hercules got hit with a solid whopper of Mjolnir, he would be GG's. But Kratos with the Soul Amp should push past that. Besides with the Hippocamps, he needed the greater help of Gaia to be able to feed. And I believe that the Hippocamps with Poseidon as the main avatar is too ridiculously out of this world, a whole kaiju monster that he would be of a whole different, pedestal of power cramp, to actually be faltered. So yeah, Kratos and Loki, the possible mix of both Thorn to be had would be a very unparalleled duo that I think would push through a lot of different people. Kratos has always been rack of all trades capabilities at this point. Defeat a lot of these different people. Will go on to actually defeat the infamous, and I think has a lot of reasonable regard to say that is just beyond a lot of niggas compare. So to me, yeah, like I just feel like there's a lot of reasons to say that it'd be very hard for him to take out the Halo camp. They would find a way and push through, and I think there's a lot of things that Kratos could do that could gain greater sense of advantage than what he could actually do at this time. But that's all on the grandstand, how I see things in greater case of like potential for the fight to all around work or, go fall out. Right. But still. Next, young Zeus. He's powerful Olympian. There's all these different cases, feats and accolades. Put him in high grade standing to say sufficely that young Zeus is a whole different, great form of, not just powerhouse, but figure that has pretty much omnipotent like case of stances, in the case for power, his lightning bolt, his electricity, all his pure power is so a whole different realm of ridiculous caliber that he could just flatline and straight effortlessly just full-fledged demolition for almost every creative person, and it's so unimaginably powerful and booming ridiculous that the god of the sky, the eagle of Olympus, would just talon through niggas. So yeah, Surtur though, because the building gonna push back Kratos and Loki, and is obviously stronger than that form, has a lot of boasts of being ridiculous, fire giant, mage of fire, could pull a lot of most craziest shit, and does have statements about being so wildly more powerful than others. One of the most strongest. Jotun has a lot of different hells and regards, and if we compare it to mythology and even what God of War said about Surtur, that Surtur just making a sword and his greater boast of power is one of the most powerful forms, and he has primordial fire being able to be essence in him. So yeah, like I would like to say that he could be young Zeus. You could make an argument that young Zeus could best him in his overall greater range and versatility, but I think Surtur's raw power, durability, and pull of like very unique essence of creative, very creative, defense and sense of like wild beam of strength and whole different hail of the most crazy record of power and dumbing of like crazy shit can really be out there to destroy this man Zeus. Don't get it twisted. I still think it'd be a very contentious fight. I just feel like Surtur has a lot more array of different shit that you could try to say he could core about, in like a full-fledged heated fight, like just going hand to hand. I think Surtur has a lot of boasts of being Wabidoo way more powerful. If all the statements of different aspects shit stand true, which I feel like is reasonable, and just the fact that he is a crazy built regard, avalanche of fire and pull shit, and is one very prevalent, big dog powerhouse that is matching a lot of creative shit, and he was one of the greatest, possible threats to Odin and Ragnarok as a person, and allying with, the main characters would have helped out a great form bunch. I think he has a lot of reasonable accolade to say that he could be in a higher stand than young Zeus at bare minimum. But next we have Kratos at the end of Ragnarok, considering everything. Hacks, creative, most wacky dude, creative, all different type of the different weaponry, advancements, enchantments, other shit of that regard. I don't want to be on repetition. This is kind of a lot to go and take in. That not only does he have the blessing of primordial fire enhancement, he has obviously dropped their spear, axe, all different type of hacks and maneuvers, way max to the greatest regard, and could, in all, just decisively bash Surtur and everything he has to offer could be countered. Obviously, with him, he has way more rocking in his favor. Kratos is a whole different, insurmountable, built different Craig, dude. He's a whole different mountain league of wacky hacks. He has all the accolades, all the regard for besting all these different people. And he would be a dude that would be hard to even possibly try to eclipse in his peak stance of, power pull with everything he has to offer. But in Freya, not only from her magic being way more creative, cracked, wicked proportions, is said to be the most, fearsome and, crazed fighter that he has fought, and is a very, defined ally, but is definitely one hell of an opponent. Freya was not known to be who she was by Kratos, and Kratos, by all mixed arguable merit, especially being a Valkyrie, I would perceive is reasonably going out. Freya has been able to tussle with him, give great fighting to him, was confident in different mixture of going about the means of killing Kratos. Kratos obviously did not want to kill her, and you can mix perceiving greater form of shit, would not want to full go all out, but if they had to, I think Freya's a little bit more up than him. Freya is not only as well, has a case of, being the strongest Valkyrie, strongest motherfucker that Kratos has faced when it comes into that accolade is greater than someone like, Sigrun. Has ridiculous worth and capabilities. She has all different other great pools of hacks and capabilities, experience, record label, on multiple stand, that she is a top dog combatant. She could fly. And in the fight with Gná, Kratos had a little bit of slower time to recuperate and try to pull himself off his back. And Freya was able to stop him from getting greater attacked and or putting greater, defensive movement and damage. Then Kratos and get twisted. Kratos putting in just a great deal of work, and they obviously scaled to each other. But Freya was a lot more prevalent person standing toe to toe with Gná. Gná 1v1 style, I think all around has a lot of credibility to best them individually. You can make your arguments for either, especially like Freya in comparison. But I think that Gná reasonably is a whole ridiculous pool of shit from Vanaheim magic, from Bifrost, all essence of, the most crazy showing of dump truck, boom and wow, like array and bliss of like magic. She has a lot of combinations and creative things that without Kratos and or Freya and mixture combo could not be defeated by. I think Gná is a ridiculous sense of like, capabilities and or pool of like crazy shit to where you could argue that she reasonably should defeat all different other odds. And like my argument for Thor and everyone else reasonably with being a whole different wild regard of power stand and having the capability to reasonably adapt to drop near another shit, in comparison by fighting prowess. If we had to talk about them fighting against them, and as well, obviously, the argument for the fact of, Freya, felt it was very wise to face Heimdall together with Kratos, and other people, not necessarily needing drop near, or the reactions drop near would be same in mixture for other people fighting it, and as well, their own creative magic and capabilities and pair should reasonably defeat Heimdall, regardless if they have it or not. And I think that Freya's magic, her assortment of shit, experience, and a lot of what she can hold a different measure, I feel like should all around best Heimdall. And I feel like if Heimdall really tried to do anything of greater work with Freya, it would not really put her down. And to me, I just think that, like with Gná, they're a whole different, ball game, a league of a whole, like, whoppy-doo ting that they should just be able to cruise through and, be a whole different echelon of superiority and all different pool of their hacks and capabilities that they would decisively best them. I like no joke shit, no repetition, no wild like speaking shit. I'm just trying to say the most concise, cohesive point that they are so more proficiently and precise in their movement and capabilities that I would say that would be too much of a prevalent thing for some of the niggas below them to take on, where they would be too of a a cool sense way, but in a too dynamic essence of cutting edge display, for what they actually can pull in a compare bang for bang sense. Because again, Gana and Freya do a whole different great record hold of the most peakest regards of magic accessories, skill, regards, and things like when it comes down to being the queen of Valkyries, you have to be the strongest. Odin put his faith in her. He put a lot of time and effort to coerce, manipulate, and cream in the mind of Gana to be this vengeful being that slayed about in the name of Odin. And just Shawty's a dummy built different case of demon that is a whole different gay way for hands and decimation to people. I feel like Shawty is giving the essence of like Melania of Ragnarok, where Shawty is unimaginably fucking ridiculous. Like Shawty gives me cancer every time I face her, right? She is just going to be a whole fucking like paved way of bloodshed for a great deal of the list. And I think in individual shit is one dangerous, uncanny vibe though. Now, young Zeus, the Blade of Olympus, simply put, his concentrated power helped win the Great War, annihilated most of the Great Deal of Titans. His dick super powerful, can fly, has every capability in touch with the case of younger Zeus. That's the Blade of Olympus, can utilize it in greater form. And yeah, young Odin not only took out Mimir in a greater form, right? Mimir being the case of the core conceptual weapon of all the 9 realms molded together. But the fact that young Odin has all these different accolades and capabilities to be seen in high greater standing than some other people, with the fact that Odin, right, throughout his young age and throughout his development and time, learned so much, grew so much, and grew so varied, and is definitely a high grade case of matter, standing person in a lot of different aspects. But still, Tyr, right? I know some people have mixed interpretation of him being like even up here, from the fact that obviously he had a spar with Kratos, and that sparring, you could argue, has mixed matter not being as taken as seriously as it could. But Tyr to me is showcased ridiculous, way more, high key, potent, octane, visceral levels of like magic, versatility, skill, capabilities of the most ridiculous regard. He's said to be the greatest challenge for Kratos within Valhalla, one of the most dummy, wild, and paralleled fighter, a man that has no down form of like actual skill in this shit. He's effortless, he's crazed, he's vigorous in every form. My man got the purification of battle entirely running through his mind. He is so much of a stylistically built different fighter. He oozes raw to the most illest regard, killing essence, and stylistically is built different. He has so many accolades, so many capabilities, so many rack of all trades for being skilled. He faced a stronger version of Kratos than Thor. He's done better against Thor than, in comparison, where it wasn't necessarily like a mix, like brawler slug match, but there's occasions where Tyr is able to push past, ground, out muscle, out skill, and fling about multi-rack of all trades like no other to build a more proficiently outbox and outskill him to most crazy regard. And just simply put, Tyr to me is like second to Odin. If we talk about full-fledged, and is definitely like second strongest of the Norse gods in a greater form. He did better against Kratos than Thor, Heimdall, other niggas. He went full all out. He faced him with all credit of his capabilities. He fought him with all his different assortment of hacks. He has Bifrost running through his veins. He got the sight. He got the blades. He got the maneuvers. He got blood magic. He got fire magic. He can fly. He can make illusions. He can make clones. He can do all that crazy shit. His skill is ridiculous. And he's unrefutably one of the best opponents Kratos would have to face, and definitely a nigga that stands to him to the most highest regards. And when we talk about a fight where there's no holding back, Tyr going for the kill or fighting to his more open-ended sense, I think Tyr is one crazy, tamed fighter when he really wants to get on, because he could pull a great storm of shit, and it's definitely not to be trifled with. But then we have Odin, the all-knowing dick rider, the god of ravens, King of the Aesir, top dog. His magic and prevalence in the God of War universe is ridiculous. his entire existence personifies a whole different built regard of essence and standing, and he can pull so many ridiculous form of hacks, not just in base, but greater acquire shit from the land and other shit that would make him so unsurmisably built different. He bested two of the case of the people in the iconic triple right by himself, and it wasn't for Freya coming in. I don't see how Kratos and Atreus could have got out of that. I see Odin as being so comparable to a lot of people, not only from narrative of being one of not the most biggest focal point of focus and capability to be fought against, right, by Kratos, where in comparison with the others, Kratos puts him in, great, respectable, feared, or very much argument to be worried and contingentified purpose, while Odin is so much of a out of the box type of stance for Kratos that in the mix of facing him, Odin was doing a lot to really put pressure and really nail home his dominance. Don't get it twisted. There's an argument that Odin physically is not greater form strong, but he's able to pull a lot of creative shit with his strength. He was able to lift Mjolnir, so I don't really think he's physically like a fucking, stick of a man. But yeah, he's just a whole, out of the box crack trademark for the most slick of the most wild proportions of magic, but it's kind of like silly lay of that real bigger foundation of magic prowess, because it really puts him higher. Then God of War 2 Zeus is ridiculously cracked. Arguably God of War 2 Zeus is like an underformed version of his greater, form in God of War 3. But again, he's still very much ridiculous and has all the hell and great cracking of, most booming wild portions of shit. The God of Sky, still laying down the thunderous lightning and going about full throttle kicking, levels of, the most highest renowned pool of power, where he's able to shape shift, do it in colossal create his things, so whatever power grade lay of them people, and was so conventionally on a different standard for power pool that when it came time for Kratos to wind time, pull up on him and bang out with him, he again was overpowering him, laying smack down to him, putting in great work, and just was a lot more effortlessly, zealously out of his perception and putting him through whole new ropes of mass beatdown that had to be weaseled out of, and even then, it's so insanely durable that he could push through a lot of them crossroads and most creative shit. Granted, I think Zeus and Odin, especially on God of War 2, right, is a very contingent fight, right? But I think that, there's a lot of arguments to say that Zeus is just so unimaginably more powerful and capable than him. So yeah. Then you have Kratos / Loki / Freya. I don't actually entirely, think that it would be easy for them to best Zeus like with Odin, but I think within the scenario or not, they showcase not just great triple teamwork, but all together have their own interesting boast to build the best people. And I definitely think across the entire greater form of the list, we'll be able to not just jump man niggas, put niggas down, and full, pull all aspects of the most creative record in the end to all around define, the most crazy team of all, where they're not only pulling at greater leg, hacks and capabilities of that sort, but them as a team are able to put the beats hellishly on a nigga and full course on to the grand scope win over him when he'd been terrorizing being a whole full throttle tyrant over the entire thing. Insane credit and moves, you know what I'm saying? But then we have Giant Zeus, which would be simple. He's a giant, more powerful, more capable, and shows a better light of, his most craziest regard shit. Then God of War 2 Zeus with the Blade of Olympus. Booming Wild can wash niggas of the face of the earth. Is a booming wild creative dude. They don't give a fuck about nobody. And just with the Blade of Olympus is ridiculous on a whole different stance of power pool. But I believe that Kratos at the end of God of War Valhalla with all his weapons, all of his, hacks, technique, capabilities, has reasonable, stance of being a higher grade, capable, person than Case of Zeus. With his shit, he has his own Blade of Olympus. He has a bunch of different crazy record of hacks. He can do a lot more crazy shit than what Hela would ever ask. And simply put, this man, has pushed through everything mentally, physically, and spiritually. So in the end, he all around in the grand scope, shit all around the family, best him, and I feel like pushed past him. And he got his own Blade of Olympus, so it would be pretty much a greater form sword fight, and he has a greater rack of all trades, I feel like, than arguably when he would fight him in God War 2, with him having live next, right? Sorry for the mess up and mix of it. Nigga over here, yawning, this nigga been at this for a minute. Yeah, and he, with the drop near spear, Blade of Chaos, you know what I'm saying? Cool. Laying down on a lot of the mix-ups that this man Zeus could possibly, pull. The Blade of Olympus itself, all of his other mix-ups that Valhalla allows him to have, armaments, the fact that he full end-all defeated Tyr, gave him a greater form of, fight and clash, and even if you want to argue that Tyr could maybe kill Kratos, put him down for a time, or whatever the fuck happened, Kratos pushed him beyond compare, like never to be recognized, and again, it's the pure fact that, again, he is ridiculous and all the incredible, form of taking, quote unquote, himself to the greatest limits of possibility, right? And going beyond, to me, would solidify him as being stronger. Zeus from God of War 3, reasonably as well, is ridiculous, is a greater extent from what he's shown in God of War 2, scales to a greater version of Kratos. It should have the reasonable accounting for being of a higher standpoint, of the scaling chain for all different types of shit. And God of War 3, one-shotted post God of War 3 Kratos, hustle and pull and prevalence of power scope beyond compare, and his all different grounds of beast, right? And all around because of his greater scaling chain, array of shit, and possibly greater scaling to him even without the Blade of Chaos and being able to trade in better form, I think in the end would all around slap up his, older version of his son. But peak God of War 3, aka pretty much about the end of God of War 3 Kratos, is a whole different aspect of crazy. Nigga has all these different great run of hacks, versatility, capabilities, skill. The speed is way up more in his favor. He's just a whole new dummy regard of demon time mode, and could devastate the entire fucking list with so many of the most ridiculous regard of shit. And even if you want to say some people give it mixed different senses into challenge, I feel like the only person is really end of God War Valhalla Kratos that doesn't really stack in the greatest favor against them because of the fact that he really has hacks and capabilities that really all around can outmaneuver him. But just the pure fact that he has the Blades of Chaos, with greater amp shit, Vitanax, dropping their spirit, and the Blade Olympus that could give better essence of possibly, instant clash to where they, would be full fight, full scaling, full going all out, the whole debate. I think in the grand scope that God of War 3 Kratos is a whole different, essence of power pool that he could just pulverize and just pillar a nigga's ass, to the most greatest form of, pain. And just simply put, just dog on a lot of niggas and could absolutely, vaporize the niggas those senses they wanted to. But it is what it is. Besides, God of War 3 Kratos being a whole different de facto staple of Blacker Force energy, you have this motherfucker Ragnarok, who was a being that was a entire full-fledged threat to the entire core essence of the Nine Realms. He had the power to destroy the Nine Realms from destruction of Mjolnir. Did not take, no or any possible case of, switch up from anybody. He would go about full breaking new levels of demon time stance, would be laying down the foundation for demise of almost everybody. And if it wasn't for Mixer being the core that was hit by Surtur, depending on how you mix on the stretch, there's an argument that he could have eradicated the entire fucking Pantheon. You know what I'm saying? A no arguable mix of trace, right? Because it's still kind of like unchained, thing with it. But it's also the record that, he could full be a greater threat than all compare. Ragnarok not only brings about ultimate destruction by his own namesake and delivers different aspects of that, but it's the fact that he was a threat to all the mainline people, was holding a grandstand being. His size, weight, hail, everything is just of a whole different greater merit than this man Kratos. And yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'll see all around the grand scope God of War 3 Kratos beating him unless you want to ponder different possible acts of, utilizing the power of hope. But the final three, higher plane of existence, Athena. Higher plane of existence can pull out the most wild regard of shit. Should be in scale to the same matter of higher, stand concepts. In the case for fear, Zeus being the embodiment of fear and being an entire plague of disintegration and unfortunate, ruthless, hellish order to be coming, not only from the corruption, because that niggas all corrupted with hijinks COVID, but the fact that he able to rubble so much new level of crazy crackness that it would entirely destroy everybody that came just by existing, but also in being drain their powers and be entirely the gruesome, the pinnacle of what it means to be a villain that is entirely, on one with no compare, no compassion, no pullback. Like Fear Zeus entirely personifies the meaning of devastation and fear all at once in every creative way. Mortal Kombat activity will be going on with this nigga where he like Shao Kahn and single-handedly just purges you of your soul. But then at the top is Omni Boy, Kratos with the power of hope. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I love you guys. I appreciate you for watching this long-ass video. It was obvious I'm getting a little bit tired. I talked a lot. I did a lot in depth speaking with my brain. I'm going to go to fuck the bed. I appreciate you guys for watching. A lot of dope things to be talked about. Besides for White Kratos, the Omni Boy, Hopium, Incarnate. And yeah, simple as that. I love y'all. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Peace out, my army. Love y'all.